ILTV on the hour. We're live from Israel with your top headlines from across the region. It's 7 a.m. in New York City and 2 p.m. here in Israel. Praised Netanyahu's experience and strong leadership, saying he stood up to pressure at home and abroad, adding, when the truth comes out and the facts are known, I am confident that appreciation for your leadership will be even greater. The U.S.-born Dermer, who became an Israeli citizen in 1997, served as one of Netanyahu's closest advisors and as a former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. During his term as minister, he was the target of criticism from some of the hostage families over his handling of the negotiations to secure their release. Upon resigning, Dermer said he had fulfilled his mission to confront Iran's nuclear threat, strengthen Israel's alliances, and help bring the hostages home. While stepping down from the government, Dermer will operate as a special envoy for Netanyahu, reportedly remaining involved on certain issues, such as efforts to expand the Abraham Accords. This according to the Times of Israel. U.S. President Donald Trump has now formally requested that Israeli President Isaac Herzog grant Prime Minister Netanyahu a full pardon for the offenses he is currently accused of in his corruption trial. Trump first made the suggestion informally in a remark directed to Herzog during his speech at the Knesset on October 13th. Now he has made that request in a letter addressed to Herzog, saying it is time to let Bibi It is time to pardon Benjamin Netanyahu and unify Israel, ending the lawfare once and for all. Prime Minister Netanyahu has stood tall for Israel in the face of strong adversaries and long odds, and his attention cannot be unnecessarily diverted. While I absolutely respect the independence of the Israeli justice system and its requirements, I believe that this case against Bibi, who has fought alongside me for a long time, including against the very tough adversary of Iran, is a politically unjustified persecution. President Herzog's office responded by saying that while, quote, the president of Israel holds President Trump in high regard, President Herzog has repeatedly clarified that anyone seeking a pardon must submit a formal request in accordance with established procedures. Prime Minister Netanyahu has himself not officially requested a pardon from Herzog. Syria's President Ahmed al-Shara says that President Trump backs his demand for a full Israeli withdrawal from all of the areas the IDF moved into last year before Damascus proceeds with any normalization of ties with Jerusalem. Shara made the claim in an interview in the Washington Post today following his meeting with Trump at the White House on Monday. Shara told the Post that Trump, quote, supports our perspective as well, and he will push as quickly as possible in order to reach a solution for this. Now, Israeli troops crossed the northern border to secure parts of Syrian territory after the fall of the Bashar Assad regime in order to prevent Hezbollah and other militant Islamic forces from moving into those areas and to also deter attacks by them on the resident Druze population. Al-Shara said the IDF presence is no longer needed with the ejection of Hezbollah troops from Syria. He also rejected an Israeli demand for the border area to be demilitarized, saying Israel is being motivated more by expansionist aims than security concerns. The U.S. State Department is denying reports in Saudi media claiming that President Trump's special envoy and son-in-law Jared Kushner met with one of the leaders of the Palestinian militias in Gaza opposed to Hamas. The report claims that Kushner met with Yasser Abu Shabab, who leads a local militia in Rafah, at the U.S.-led civilian military command center in Kiryat Gat. This is part of the effort to create an alternative security force to Hamas in post-war Gaza. Abu Shabab's militia is also said being considered as part of a plan that would have 200 Hamas terrorists still hiding out in tunnels beneath Rafah be given safe passage across the Egyptian border into Sinai and then on to a third country. Kushner and Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly agreed to that arrangement in a meeting on Monday, although no nation has yet accepted, at least publicly, to take the terrorists in. IDF Colonel Avichai Adrei, the IDF's Arabic language spokesperson, is retiring after nearly 2 decades in the role. Adrei built a massive following across the Arab world using social media to counter propaganda and promote understanding, becoming a household name in much of the Arab world for his work, even earning the nickname Mr. Evacuate Now, this for his warnings to civilians to clear active war zones. The colonel's work earned him praise, sometimes ridicule, and occasionally threats from across the region. Adraei often spoke directly to audiences in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza in perfect Arabic, breaking through hostile media barriers. His unique style made him one of the most influential Israeli figures in Arab digital and media spaces. Good luck, Colonel. The return this week of Lieutenant Hadar Golden's body from Gaza after 11 years proved another benefit resulting from the ceasefire that ended Israel's 2-year war with Hamas. But it came amid increasing signs of strain on the agreement, raising serious concerns over how it could move forward. The same can also be said with the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon, as the IDF continues its strikes on Hezbollah targets, as the Iranian-backed terror movement continues to try and rebuild its military infrastructure along the northern border. Well, for more on this and other issues, we're joined by Dr. Eric Mandel. He's the founder and director of MEPIN, the Middle East Political and Information Network, and Dr. Eyal Pinko, an intelligence, cyber, and security expert. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Eric, before we get into some of the issues I just mentioned, I want to get your response to the resignation of Minister Ron Dermer today. Certainly, he's been a key figure in dealing with some of those issues over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, more than 2 years. Even when he was ambassador in the United States, he was still considered Prime Minister Netanyahu's key and most trusted aide for advice. People would refer to him here, and I think also in Israel, as Bibi's brain. So he was involved with almost everything, whether it was the Iran portfolio, dealing with expanding the Abraham Accords. So with this diplomacy, security, he was involved in so much. And the fact that he is leaving an official position, I don't believe he's going to be going that far away. He's going to be a special envoy, but somebody who has been pivotal. I think the fact that he became more visible and more of a target recently for criticism, certainly during the last 2 years with the hostage families as another target besides Bibi, probably didn't make him feel very good. I think he probably preferred working behind the scenes. So I think he's not totally gone, but I think he would prefer to be a little more in the shadows. And I think he should, from an American perspective, I think he was a tremendous asset to the prime minister and giving really sage advice.
Right. And Eyal, certainly Minister Dermer resigns at a really what some people are calling a critical time for some of the ceasefires he had negotiated, Eyal, especially the Gaza ceasefire. First of all, I just want to get your reaction to the situation with these 200 terrorists in and of itself, because of the agreement that supposedly was reached, and this is not officially confirmed, that they would be given safe passage abroad, but maybe also looking at the bigger context. Surely this is one of those issues that should have been sort of dealt with or resolved before the ceasefire, or agreed to before the ceasefire replaced, perhaps emblematic as the kind of making it up as you go along approach that seems to have characterized the situation in Gaza since the ceasefire started.
Yes, you know, in Hebrew there is a very strange phrase we call it a big head, to think in larger dimension and all. And this, I think, what is characterizing the Israeli approach. We have an agreement of a ceasefire. Everything goes as it should be. But Israel, from some reason, before the other side is respecting and putting the efforts to respect the agreement, Israel is doing much more than it needed. So, for example, Israel released the prisoners much before time when it needed. Israel is delivering much more food and other humanitarian aid to Gaza before the other side is agree or putting, his part of the agreement. So this is the 200 terrorists over there. This is totally part of this behavior of Israel of not doing or not conducting a good negotiation. This issue is totally not connected to the agreement. Israel had to take those guys, to put them in custody, to put them in prison, to charge them as a terrorist, and that's all. And they said the people in Gaza said, no, put them alive so you will get the body, that they had to give it in any case. And we are giving them more and more and more, thinking that they maybe there will be some kind of Western guys, and they they respect the agreement. They're not. So
Right.
this is what we see.
And Eric, I think I really gave pretty much the Israeli perspective on many analysts here on how the agreement is proceeding. Maybe you can give us more of the perspective from the U.S. of the Trump administration, which is pressing Israel to move forward on some of these matters, even as Ayal points out, Hamas has failed to fulfill some of its side of the agreement, precisely the return of the bodies of the 4 remaining hostages still held in Gaza.
So I think it's important for the people of Israel to realize that American interests, certainly for the Trump administration, don't always coincide with Israeli interests. And the Trump administration very much wants to keep the ceasefires going, even if whether in the north and the south, they want to have these victories. I think from Israel's point of view, they look at these as like the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, where they're ceasefires and they could be reneged at any time the enemy has an advantage. Regarding the 200 terrorists that are in the tunnels, I would say from a dispassionate view, if they showed Israel where the tunnels are that they're hiding to save Israel a tremendous amount of work and risk, that would be a good idea to release them, although it's supposedly they're going to be released. The idea that my administration, I believe, mistakenly believes that releasing them, and if they put down their arms, would be a good precedent. That should not be a precedent at all. I mean, they need to get out, and putting down their arms should be the minimum. Shouldn't even be a concession. But again, in order to keep this ceasefire going, and my country is so invested now. You have the center in Kiryat Gat. There's word that there's going to be a huge American-run center with international troops for the stabilization force. So there's tremendous American prestige and political capital that's being used here. So again, the eyes are on American interests, and it gets to the pressuring of Israel, and that it relates to Turkey's pressure, Erdogan's pressure in wanting to be involved there. From my point of view, Israel should not concede on Turkey being involved at all. They are the muscle of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Qatar should not be there because of the financier of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they are supporters of Hamas. They don't want Hamas to totally go. So again, I think the key here is how do you play that with the president feeling he could do pretty much whatever he wants because of all the things he has done for Israel, starting, of course, with Iran and beyond.
Right. Certainly you could respond to some of what Eric said. He raises up these reports of this beyond what already exists in Kiryat Gat, this apparently massive base that's going to be built on the Gaza with border, is foreign troops in Israel, really for the first time stationed here, certainly to that degree. Are there not some worrying precedents being set? Certainly, Israel's trusting the Trump administration, but the administrations change in Washington, and these precedents could come back and haunt Israel.
Yeah, I think the most important sentence that was said by my colleague is that Israel doesn't understand that the American has the American agenda and not the Israeli agenda. And the Israelis and the Israeli government and the Israeli people tend to forget about it. So I do believe that I will say that from my perspective, the base in Kiryat Gat, the American base, and the other nationals, I don't think it's a good sign, because at first we tracked some of the Trump sayings that he wants to make the northern part of Gaza Strip as American autonomy, as part of economical approach of competing with the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, and to create alternative economical routes goes from India through the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and finishing in the American autonomy in the northern part of in the northern part, sorry,
Of Gaza.
of Gaza. And I think this is the first step of that. So I think that's the move over there. And I can tell you that I'm personally I'm pretty much worried about some kind of, what is important is below the radar. And I hope that this is not a sign that there is some kind of a movement towards a way or path that will connect the Palestinian Authority with Gaza Strip, that will be, international territory, and will divide Israel into two parts. And I really have worries about that this is not part of this move. There are many things that we don't know about the agreement between the US and Israel, and I'm pretty worried about that.
All right, gentlemen, we could spend even a lot more. There's a lot more to say about Gaza, but there are some other fronts Israel's confronting. I want to now move to the northern front. There, I would say the situation really almost can't really call it a ceasefire. I mean, Israel is just this week launching strikes, at least 5 Hezbollah operatives taken out just in the past few days. In South Lebanon, Hezbollah seems to be rearming and retrenching in South Lebanon, and one feels that at any moment that situation can explode. I mean, Eric, where does it go from here? Because right now there does seem to be serious deterioration there. I would say not deterioration, just the situation there seems increasingly like it's heading towards another conflict.
Well, my country's expectation of what the Lebanese armed forces or the will or the ability of the Lebanese government to really put down Hezbollah and for a country to fight with one force was totally mistaken. Hezbollah is still, even though they have been tremendously degraded, is still tremendously in power. I think political influence, and they still have a military influence. And they're now operating some places below the Litani River. I think a lot of this goes back, people forget, to the United Nations Security Council resolution. 1701 said they can't operate south of the Litani, but there was 1559, which said Hezbollah had to be disarmed every place. Now, you've had American envoys like Morgan Ortega bring this up, but I think it falls on deaf ears. Even if the Lebanese government want to do it, they just don't have that ability. So Israel's been going in really since the ceasefire, almost on a daily basis, enforcing what the Lebanese armed forces cannot and is unwilling to do. And even Israel, I remember having this discussion even years ago, that so much is hidden in civilian areas in southern Lebanon, and the Lebanese armed forces says they will not go into private residences to do this. So how are you going to disarm Hezbollah? So will there be another war? Again, I hate to say this, and it's probably overused. The question is not if, but it's going to be when, especially as Hezbollah rearms. And we even hear that rumors, and they'll tie in eventually when we talk about Syria, that maybe some of the land corridor through Syria to rearm Hezbollah has maybe reopened partially. Certainly it gets along with people being bribed or whatever to make those things happen, but they're coming in from different ways, and it's a tremendous problem for Israel, but it's also a tremendous problem for America, which thinks that Lebanon is capable of doing this, and I just don't believe they are.
Eyal, I want to get your response to this. I mean, those airstrikes, Israel's experience is that you can only really achieve so much from airstrikes. And that at a certain point, if you agree with Eric that the war, a more broader conflict with Hezbollah is almost inevitable, it seems.
Yeah. First, I will tell you from my own perspective. After the Second Lebanese War, I was a young commander, Navy commander. And 1701 UN resolution was a fiction from the beginning. It was just a fiction. The UN forces were there in the sea, on the land. It was nothing. The Hezbollah just were ruling everything everywhere in Lebanon, in the northern part, in the southern part. So resolution 1701 was just a fiction. And you see that in the last few months, the Iranians are gaining power again. Hezbollah is gaining power again with the aid of Iran. And in the Middle East, things came to normality, which is an extensive force built up from all over. And now Hezbollah with the new Lebanese government, Hezbollah wants to show them that he is the real owner, which he is. And once again, not understanding the Middle East culture, the Lebanese government cannot do that. And I think that Western governments, as the U.S., the U.K., the French government, they then don't see the reality as it is here. And as you see now, the force buildup is high. They are sending weapons from Iran through the northern part of Syria and the northern part of Jordan, which are territories which are no man's lands over there. They are rebuilding. They are showing the government, the Lebanese government, that they can do whatever they want. And I think that the Israeli attacks are coming in the way that nobody will drag into another war, another escalation. And that's the reason that it's only from or by aerial strikes and not by any kind of ground forces maneuver. And this is the main issue with that. And we are striking. They are continue what they want to do, and I believe that in the near future we will see another escalation between Hezbollah and Israel. I think everything goes there. The narratives that are being transmitted by Hezbollah heads, by Israel as well, and it goes there.
Right. And Eric, now you've both mentioned Syria, especially the situation in South Syria. President al-Shara having, we should say, a historic meeting at the White House with President Trump, but it was very low-key and maybe a little disappointing for those that are already projecting Syria joining the Abraham Accords. Al-Shara saying Israel, the IDF must withdraw completely from those positions in South Syria until there's any normalization, but also rejecting calls for demilitarization, demilitarization zone in South Syria. So from that perspective, perhaps a little disappointing, the meeting between President al-Shara and President Trump.
Well, what it is that President Trump and his administration see, again, interests diverge here with Israel. They see an opportunity to reorient Syria towards Washington, and maybe towards some of the Gulf states, and unfortunately against Israel's interests towards Turkey. The administration thinks Turkey is a good thing to have in Syria, and that is a very bad thing for Israel's security interests to be there. Turkey with Qatar are very dangerous animals to be, whether in Gaza or up in Syria. Now, what al-Shara said, that normalization was never on the table here because his name was al-Golani, before al-Shara. This is, the Golan Heights is something he can't give up. And, I do believe that away from the suit underneath, there is still the spots of Al-Qaeda that may still be there. And I think, you should always remember who he was and what, and even if he isn't, he already there's over 20 offices, according to Alma Research, that are radicalized jihadists who are part of his army. You look at who his administration is, this is not a compromising administration. He was very non-conciliatory regarding the minorities. He was saying, they just want autonomy. And in the administration, my administration has been basically saying we want a centralized Syria, and that really goes directly against Israel's interests because the Kurds and the Druze and the Alawites and the Christians are going to be persecuted. And I think we're being fooled here in the United States a little bit about what his agenda is. Now, if Israel could get, in my opinion, a true deconfliction agreement where they did not have any Syrian troops below Damascus, then you can consider removing from the 9 topographical areas Israel has moved into in the buffer zone. But he's made it very clear that he's not interested in that. He says Syria has to control everything. And
right.
so,
I want to give Ayala a chance then to also weigh in, whether he thinks there's any realistic chance, for example, even that deconfliction agreement that Eric just mentioned.
Yes, in the Bible it says, or there is a question: will a tiger change his stripes? And unfortunately, the answer is no. And this is exactly like that. El Shara is still butchering the other Muslim groups, like the Alawites, is butchering the Druze. Keep on doing that. And I don't know why the Western countries, including France, Germany, and also the US, is just avoiding those sites. And suddenly he became a saint. He's a nice guy. He's a saint. He's to reconstruct Syria, but he's still as a terrorist. He was born like that. He was educated like that, and he is still doing this kind of terror acts against the people in Syria. Taking that into consideration, Erdogan moves in Syria is also a very important player. We didn't speak about his involvement in Gaza, which is very, very critical. Yossi Cohen, the ex-Mossad, the head of the Mossad, once said, you can find it in the newspapers, he said many years ago that Turkey became a more dangerous enemy than Iran. And you see Erdogan's move, unfortunately. Turkey was a great friend of Israel. Erdogan's moves in Syria, in Gaza, with the Muslim Brotherhood, also influencing in the US. We cannot forget the massive influence in the US of the Muslim Brotherhood from Turkey, from Qatar, which influenced the public opinion. We can see what happened in New York in the last week. This is one of the signs for that. I think the mess in Syria is also critical. I don't see any kind of Abraham Accords agreement with Syria in the next future. And one of the chaos that we are facing, not only in Lebanon, in Gaza, it's also in Syria as well.
All right, gentlemen, concerning picture, but of course, Israel will have to navigate as best it can in these choppy waters. Doctors Eric Mandel, Eyal Pinko, thank you for joining us on ILTV.
Thank you.
Well, after that, let's end on some good news. Israeli actress Gal Gadot has been named as the winner of the 2026 Genesis Prize. That's the so-called Nobel Prize for the Jewish world that carries with it a grant of $1 million. Gadot was commended for her advocacy and support of Israel and for the victims of October 7th. The Wonder Woman actress joins such former Genesis Prize winners such as the Argentinian President Javier Milei, director Steven Spielberg, former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Robert Kraft, the owner and of the New England Patriots, the noted Jewish philanthropist, violinist Itzhak Perlman, UK Chief Rabbi, the late Lord Jonathan Sacks, and many more. Now, Gadot says she intends to donate the $1 million prize to proceeds to help Israelis heal, rebuild, and recover after October 7th. Now, she did receive immense backlash from fans internationally after posting on her social media calls to return the hostages from Hamas captivity. But Gadot's efforts didn't stop with social media. She organized private screenings of raw footage from the October 7 attacks for world readers and top Hollywood executives. A Wonder Woman indeed. Congratulations, Gal Gadot. And thank you for joining us on this edition of ILTV News. Continue watching us or follow our app. There's a QR code on your screen. I'm Khaled Ben David, and thank you for joining us on ILTV.
On this week's ILTV Insider, we're tackling a deeply troubling trend, the growing normalization of the phrase, the Gaza genocide. Once an accusation, it's now being used as an accepted fact by academics, activists, and even journalists. What happens when language this charged becomes mainstream? How does it impact Israel's image, the Jewish people, and the global fight against anti-Semitism? Joining me to break it down are former member of Knesset Mossi Raz and former AP Regional Chief Dan Perry. Together, we'll explore what's really behind this narrative, the media's role in shaping it, and how Israel can reclaim the truth before it's too late. So I want to jump right in and get started with you, Zan. This idea that Israel committed genocide. And I say that in quote marks because we don't know. Did Israel commit genocide? You'll have to answer that for me. But it's become very normalized. Academia, political activists, obviously, but even in the media. Did Israel commit genocide, and how did this happen?
Well, it is a complex question that, in the end, reduces a global historic cataclysm on all sides, that is the Gaza war, into a question of semantics. But semantics can be important. So this word genocide, it means something to a lot of people. And it is defined by the 1948 UN Genocide Convention. And that Genocide Convention speaks very clearly of the intent to destroy people in whole or in part. The interpretation of that could go a lot of different ways, but I do not think it applies to a situation where perhaps a lot of people died in the context of an intent to achieve other ends. And Israel's purpose in the war in Gaza was to destroy Hamas and to remove them as a governing and military entity in Gaza, and to recover the hostages, that all those who are dead and all those who are alive. You see very clearly that the minute those goals are achieved, Israel's willing to end the war. Therefore, it simply is not a genocide, but there has been a monumental global campaign to attach this word to Israel's actions, and that campaign has leveraged the fact that in the public at large around the world, there is great confusion about what I just said, and there's a general sense that a large-scale death is a genocide, whereas in fact, under the Genocide Convention, you can have a genocide where no one died, but there was an intent. So there's a total disconnect. So wouldn't you say Hamas committed a genocide then, but Israel did not? In my view, the October 7th action by Hamas was absolutely genocidal. Their goal was to kill as many Jews as they can. The Israeli action that killed many more Palestinians than Jews that were killed on October 7th was not genocidal because its goal was something else. There was a dual goal that did not include kill as many Palestinians as possible. Now, I'm not naive. There were people in Israel that actually would share that goal, but they were not running the government. God knows I am no fan of the Netanyahu government, but that was not the goal of the government. And therefore, I would argue, A, it's not a genocide, but B, in the public comprehension of that word, it might be seen as such if it's repeated enough times. Now notice, no one speaks of the Ukrainian genocide. It is a very, very rare word to use in history. And if it turns out that it ends up being routinely and casually applied to what happened in Gaza, because of the rarity of it, it has value. Scarcity has value. It will be very damaging for Israel. So,
Mossi, let me ask you, piggybacking on that, if Israel did not commit a genocide, then how did it become that the word is being applied to our actions? And what kind of impact is this going to have on the Jewish state? Why is there a double standard when it comes to Israel?
I'm not sure that there is double standard. I'm not sure about this term of genocide. This is something that is very juridically, and I don't I don't have enough knowledge in order to know. Probably you are right that this is not genocide. By the way, I'm not sure that what Hamas has done with all the crimes is genocide, but it's not my business to talk about that. It's crimes. The problem is, I think, that yes, there was intent even of some government, some ministers in the government, not of the government, not of the army, but there was intent, and even they were stupid enough to say that. There were, unfortunately, many soldiers took photos of themselves committing war crimes. Not only committing crimes, but taking photos of themselves. And yes, of course, I guess it's part of the fact that so many civilians were killed. It's something that we did not see here, never. Of course, it was part of it is the fact that in percentage, yes, if you talk about percentage of the population in Gaza, it's probably about more or less 4%, which is a lot. It's probably part of that is the fact that I think in most of the world, Israel is the aggressor in the fact, not of course Hamas committed the crimes in October 7, but because of the occupation. So it's part of all this picture. The fact that the government in Israel did not say, okay, we understand that there were crimes. We understand that innocent people, 2,000 babies who were born after October 7. We understand that innocent people were killed. We want to investigate. We want to make an end to that. The fact that the government is not doing that is helping those who say this was genocide.
But then what happens to the Jews that are living abroad? You know, Jews in the diaspora certainly are not making government decisions in Israel, may or may not support the policies of the State of Israel. And yet, what seems to happen is as Israel commits, quote-unquote, genocide in Gaza, this becomes mainstream, it's fueling these anti-Semitic tropes and putting the Jewish community at risk. Dan, can you talk about that?
There's no doubt that is so. I'm saying that the word genocide is very rarely applied in history. The Armenian genocide, the Turks are still denying it. The genocide of Jews, the Holocaust, the Germans are still paying for it. The Rwanda genocide, which is pretty much the only other one that's been accepted, is still a major thing, and movies are being made about it, and it still discredits the government of Rwanda, or part of it. It's a very dangerous label, and it will make it impossible for whoever is accused of such an action to navigate the world in a placid and normal fashion for many years and probably many decades, and that will apply also to their supporters. So if the Jews support Israel, then the world will see them as complicit. Imagine supporting the Nazis in 1956. You're not going to have a good time of it, okay? And therefore, it will absolutely be a booster rocket for anyone who has bad faith anti-Semitic intentions that have nothing to do with what Israel actually did or didn't do. Therefore, for the Jews in the world, unless they're prepared to disavow Israel because it will become a litmus test at all times for them, they need to get on board with the program of making sure that the events of the Gaza war are not labeled a genocide. Mossi says it's not our business, it's juridical, it's political. If it ends up being labeled a genocide, if it moves from accusations that Gaza was a genocide and that Israel should be charged with genocide to a routine and casual reference to the Gaza genocide, that will be devastating. But I have to note, I agree with Mossi. What happened in Gaza was not necessarily okay. It is conceivable that there were war crimes in Gaza. Of course, you could also argue that every war has war crimes. It could be, it may be that there are major war crimes.
And you could also argue that Hamas was using their people as human shields and that Hamas committed
absolutely.
So many issues that it almost was impossible to
fight. But Hamas
fight.
is not acceptable anywhere.
Yeah.
Hamas is a terror organization.
Israel is six weeks acceptable. Look, let me say this. 20 years ago, I was the AP bureau chief in Israel and the chairman of the Foreign Press Association in Israel, Palestine. Okay, I remember during the Second Intifada, you had, especially when it became kind of a war in the West Bank, you had a lot of actions that cost civilian lives or could have cost civilian lives. We had IDF spokesman people in our office, coming physically to our office, explaining everything they did, why they did it, why they minimized civilian casualties, whenever they didn't take an action. I remember a near assassination effort of Abdelaziz Rantisi, but they stopped because they found out his family was around, didn't want to kill 6 innocent people. And they made a point of telling us that was Israel knowing that it's under a magnifying lens today.
So what changed?
What changed is that you have this government in Israel that knows it stands accused of prolonging the war for political reasons, that knows that it stands accused in the media of bombing some cafe in Gaza where 20 people died, and it doesn't come out and say, this is untrue, or this is true and was a mistake, or here's why we did it anyway. Israel hasn't told its story. Now, I, like Mossi, suspect very strongly that part of the story is untellable.
So let me turn to Mossi for a minute, because I want to actually ask you.
They haven't even tried.
So then let me ask you this. You know, we're about to open up Gaza within the next few weeks. There was a Supreme Court ruling. Reporters are going to re-enter, foreign press, re-enter Gaza very soon. We heard, Dan, what happened 20 years ago when the reporters went in. Today, the reporters are going to go into Gaza, and they are going to see 80% of Gaza flattened. What narrative should Israel prepare? What should Israel be doing right now? I mean, you're a politician. At least could you think Israel should spin it to ensure that this genocide narrative does not continue or does not be perpetuated?
First, I have to say that the fact that international media will go into Gaza will not change anything, because in the world they saw everything. They know that.
But it's different to see it with your own eyes.
Yes, I think, but there's so many pictures and so many. We have social media, and people saw that. I think that the real reason why it was not open until now is that the government doesn't want the Israelis to know what happened in Gaza. Not that I'm sure that they care about that, but the Israelis don't know what happened in Gaza.
Don't they also watch the same social media?
Yeah, but of course. But who you see in the social media? Your friend, the one who think like you. Not you don't see the films from Gaza. You see the films from Nova.
I have to stand up
Still,
for
2 years later.
a little bit. Yes, we've seen social media, and yes, we've had reporting from inside Gaza, all by Palestinians, some working for foreign media, who you could reasonably claim are A, involved, and B, afraid of the Hamas. So there has been a degree of skepticism attached to the reporting of Gaza. Yeah, we've seen pictures of destruction.
Yeah, okay,
but you know what? We haven't seen a zoom out to really make an assessment. When professional journalists who are not involved and not afraid of Hamas go in, the reporting on what happened will have a lot more credibility. And Mayan is right. It will look terrible. So what needs to happen is Israel needs to figure out real fast why it did what it did, what is defensible, and then defend it. And they need to attack the genocide charge head on by really arguing persuasively. And it cannot be just Netanyahu, who at this point convinces no one. There has to be a concerted national effort by the government and the military to explain what they did, to apologize for what they did wrong, to maybe take a hit on things that are indefensible, and to present a picture of a reasonable country.
Do you envision...
It is not enough. It is not enough. First, what happened when UK was charged of war crimes? They said, okay, we investigate, we will charge people.
Yeah, sure.
So the international court say, okay, we have somebody to trust. Now here, you have 70,000 people who were killed. Most of them, Prime Minister says, are innocent.
And no one's been convicted of anything.
So how come? No investigation, nothing. Only one investigation, they attack the people who investigate, not the people who, okay, I don't know what they have done, we'll see. But no investigation. So Israel has to say, first, we want to investigate, and we have to take soldiers to the court. Yeah, probably most of the soldiers made a great job and were defending themselves. Okay, but for sure there were people who did not, and there is no investigation. Second, we have to show that the court is working here. The court doesn't work. The government is against the court, so it doesn't. And third, we have to say that, okay, we want to solve this conflict. We agree to Trump's plan, including Article number 19, future Palestinian. It didn't say state, but...
I think it does in point 20, actually, Palestinian statehood, point 20.
A process.
Process towards statehood,
Well,
yeah.
after reforms in the Palestinian Authority, recognition in the Palestinian will for right for self-determination and statehood.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, I can't dispute that. I'm just saying get your story straight to begin with, and understand that to make a point, sometimes you have to concede a point. But for sure, they should be more serious about investigating misdoing by soldiers, and they absolutely need to have a National Inquiry Commission headed by a Supreme Court judge, same as after every catastrophe in Israel. And the government currently is doing everything wrong, beginning with stonewalling and silence on what actually happened, and squelching of investigations, no real intent to have a National Inquiry Commission, and currently they're promoting some narrative where everyone's to blame, including all political parties in Israel. All of it aimed to evade responsibility by the Netanyahu government for
let's
the biggest
think
catastrophe
about
ever
what
to
the
fall
results of all
Israel.
of this is going to be, both for mostly talking about internal in Israel, and maybe, Dan, if you can speak about it externally, okay? So you're talking about, the narratives that need to be told. We're talking about genocide, destruction, everything that people are going to see. In the end of the day, Israelis are going to want to travel in the world, do business, and be proud to be Israelis. Mostly, are they going to be able to do that if the term genocide is being applied to our people? And Dan, if you are a young Jew on a college campus that has already endured 2 years of protests, then what is going to happen? Are you going to start to, rather than reconnect with your Zionist spirit or with Judaism, are you going to now say, I want to get away from it because I don't want anything to do with this, or I'm going to be myself accused of genocide? Most of you start.
For your question, I see that even now, Israelis go everywhere in the world. They are proud, very proud of being Israelis. And maybe there were few incidents, but very, very close to zero incidents against Israelis per se, attacking them because they are Israelis. And unfortunately, as a Zionist, I say that one of the failures of Zionism up to now is that the most problematic place, the most risky place to Jews in the world right now is still here. Not in Europe, not in US, not in Canada, or not everywhere else. And this is a thing that we must change.
Do you agree with this? And answer my question as well.
Look, if in the end the Gaza genocide becomes a thing that is routinely referenced, I think things will get very, very difficult for Israel, including for Israelis living abroad, and in particular, or traveling abroad, and in particular in Europe. For young Jews in America or UK or anywhere else today, there is a dilemma. I would hope that they continue to want to have association with Israel, whether or not it ends up being falsely accused of genocide. I would hope they forgive Israel for whatever emerges as some indisputable crime that might have happened in Gaza, which may be less than genocide, but may still be a crime. For Israelis, for Jews living abroad, by and large, the majority of Jews in the US, for example, they're not ultra-nationalistic and not attached to the ultra-right in Israel. There is a real dilemma because they cannot possibly support the Israel that will emerge from continued rule by the right-wing religious Haredi bloc. There is an apocalyptic war for the future of a political war for the future of Israel that is represented right now in a very acute way by the coming 2026 election. And if it goes in a direction of the right religious bloc, I think this will be the beginning of a divorce between Israel and the Jews of the U.S., by and large, with the exception...
Right after a time when unity was actually at its height.
Of the Orthodox, yes. It may be ironic, but that is where it's going to go. If the opposition wins that election, then a process of healing can begin that maybe will, in the end, even fix the problem, lead to a true partition from the Palestinians under a demilitarized Palestinian state or whatever it ends up being, whatever map it ends up being. But generally, Israel preserving and sustaining its democratic, liberal origins, and then it will be possible, I think, to slowly emerge from this darkness and reestablish the true partnership and even brotherhood and sisterhood with the Jews of the U.S. and
how
the world.
can the Jews of the diaspora help to debunk or to go against this genocide narrative? Is there something that could be happening abroad to help us?
Well, first of all, yeah, I think they should. I mean, if there's going to be a discussion, then they need to be part of that discussion. And it doesn't mean we justify everything Israel's done or even the Gaza war in general. It just means to understand the danger. If this genocide label ends up being attached as one of less than a half dozen in history, because it only began with the Armenian genocide, if it ends up being attached to Israel, they're in big trouble. They have to understand this and join the argument against it. Beyond that, if they want Israel to be a country that can potentially have good relations with the world, they have to get off the fence and understand that supporting Israel is not supporting the current government of Israel. The current government of Israel will lead Israel off a cliff and take many Jews with it.
Mostly, the people who are against the policies of the government or of what we've done in the war have taken to judicial reform before that, have taken to the streets and protested. What can the average Israeli do now to fight for its country? Is there a way for Israelis to somehow take to the streets or take to social networks to debunk some of the myths that Israel is being accused of and say we want to be, responsible, we want to look at what we've done wrong, but maybe also be able to tell the truth?
First, yes, tell the truth. Second, protest, I never saw in the history of the world protest like we saw here in Israel it's extraordinary, it's great, it is not enough. And yes, we should go on with the protest, but the average Israeli who is against the government, which is more or less 50% of the Israelis, now has to think how we prepare ourselves to elections. Meaning, first, I don't talk about the politicians, they have their work to do, but I think the liberal camp in Israel can win if we solve three questions. First, that all the parties are making it through the threshold. So this is to the politicians, but not only for them, for the average Israeli to go in front of Gantz residence and tell him, you cannot run alone, you have to join somebody. Second, Arab citizens of Israel must be part of this liberal Israelis who want to replace the government. It has to. We have to say that to the Arab citizens, but we have to say that to the Jewish citizens in the liberal, among the liberal in the liberal camp. Many of them don't understand that yet. And third, maybe most important, we saw about what happened to Jews abroad, but right now we don't have Aliyah. We have tens of thousands of Israelis who live every year, and we must. It's not like US that they can vote in the embassy. We must bring here tens or hundreds of thousands of people to vote, and the average Israeli should check who are his family members, who are his friends who live abroad, and to tell them, you know, October 27, we have elections. You have to come to vote, no matter what is the cost of the flight.
So we have literally 30 seconds left of the show. And Dan, I want you to answer one question, 30 seconds, so literally stick to the time. Okay, Israel, people are watching this show and they are going to, these are people who are going to be approached and told Israel has committed genocide in now 15 seconds. What do they need to respond? Give me an answer for them to tell those people.
Genocide is not a lot of people dying in the war. It is an intent to destroy a people. It is very rarely applied in history. It doesn't apply here. There is absolutely a double standard. No one speaks of the Russian genocide of Ukrainians. No one spoke of NATO genocide of Iraqis in Mosul and Syrians in Raqqa. There is absolutely a double standard that Israel is suffering from, and understanding that does not mean you support Netanyahu or support the way the war has been conducted.
Thank you so much. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time today. What an interesting conversation. And really, let's hope for better days. So thank you so much, first to you, Dan, and also to you, Mossi, of course, for being here tonight. For more bold and interesting and exclusive interviews and conversations, you can check out the ILTV podcast, available on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Ayan Hoffman. Thanks for watching ILTV Insider. Have a pleasant and safe evening.
The name of the fallen soldier Hadar Goldin has symbolized Israel's promise never to leave a soldier behind. His return from captivity after over a decade brings relief and heartache to a nation that never forgot him. ILTV correspondent India Naftali takes a closer look at who Hadar Goldin was and the legacy he leaves behind. India?
Yes, Sivan. Lieutenant Hadar Goldin was just 23 years old when he was killed in action during Operation Protective Edge in 2014. His body was then abducted by Hamas and held in Gaza for over a decade. Born in 1991, Hadar grew up in a family that was both deeply religious and patriotic. He has a twin brother and 4 older siblings. His father, Professor Simha Goldin, is a lecturer at Tel Aviv University, and his mother, Dr. Leah Goldin, is a computer scientist. A talented artist and natural leader, Hadar served as a platoon commander in the Givati Brigade's reconnaissance unit. He was also engaged to his fiancée, Adna Sarusi. The two planned to marry just months after his deployment. On August 1st, 2014, hours after the U.S. and UN announced a ceasefire deal, Hamas terrorists emerged from a tunnel in Rafah, firing at Hadar's unit and dragging him underground. He was declared killed in action shortly after, and a funeral was held in Israel, even though his body remained in Gaza. For years, his family led a nationwide campaign to bring him home, founding the Hadar Goldin Foundation and lobbying governments and international organizations. His artwork, celebrated for its depth and hope, was even displayed at the United Nations to raise awareness about his captivity. Following the events of October 7th, Hadar's story resurfaced as Israel faced another hostage crisis. And now, after 11 long years, his family finally has some closure. The Golden family spoke out last night after receiving Hadar's remains, saying the moment brought closure after 11 years of agony.
לפני 11 שנים ו3 חודשים עמדנו פה בחודש אוגוסט אחרי שחטפו לנו את הדר וצעקנו שאסור לעזוב את עזה בלי להשיב את הדר. והיה לנו מובן מאליו שמדינת ישראל לא תשאיר חיילים מאחור. לקח לנו 11 שנים להחזיר אותו בעזרת צה"ל וכוחות הביטחון.
This week, hundreds gathered in New York City for a powerful evening of resilience and solidarity hosted by Americans for Ben-Gurion University. The event marked 50 years of excellence at the Goldman Medical School and came at a pivotal time for Israel's Negev region. With moving testimonies from survivors, students, and university leaders, and a $2 million matching grant announced by the Joyce and Irving Goldman Family Foundation, the night blended emotion, hope, and even humor, led by Emmy Award-winning comedian Alex Edelman.
Americans for Ben-Gurion University brought resilience, hope, and humor to New York City benefit.
We are supporting a fabulous university that serves southern Israel, supporting their students, supporting their people.
Campaign efforts.
A4BGU's New York City benefit celebrated 50 years of excellence at the Goldman Medical School, an institution renamed in honor of Lloyd Goldman's parents.
My sisters and I named in our parents, so it's the Joyce and Irving Goldman Medical School, and my sister Katja and my sister Dorian will be here this evening, and we are thrilled about peace, about Israel, and about Ben-Gurion University.
The Joyce and Irving Goldman Family Foundation announced a $2 million matching grant to support the future of medicine, investing in BGU curriculum, students, and faculty. One of the universities that was hit hard was Ben-Gurion University. Hundreds of students found themselves returning to wear uniforms.
The university itself lost about 110 of its members and families on the 7th of October. And a number of our students and graduates were taken hostage by the Hamas, mainly from the Nova Music Festival. Over 6,000 of our students have been on reserve military duty. Some have been killed killed and wounded. It's been a difficult time, but we are resilient. We're going to move forward and make Israel better and stronger.
We heard the testimony of Sasha Trufanov, a Ben-Gurion University alumnus and hostage survivor who suffered 498 days in Hamas captivity.
Started hearing shootings coming closer and closer, voices of speaking, shouting. We had a discussion between me and my fiancée, Sapir. She said it's Arabic. I said that no, it's Hebrew. I wanted to believe, like there are soldiers.
And a testimony of Noah Shuker, a fourth-year medical student and casualty officer in the IDF, that shared what the importance of A4BGU.
They make sure that we have everything we need. I can say, as a student who also been in reserve service for over 400 days, they made sure that I could really just stay on top of my studies, not miss any test. I didn't miss any lecture. I had everything that I needed in terms of marathons and tutoring and psychological support. They really made sure that we would see social workers, and we had talks with regular talks with psychologists, making sure really that the university is doing everything they can to protect us and to keep us on top of our studies and in good shape.
You could feel the sense of mission and goodwill among those who came to support the people of Israel and Ben-Gurion University. The evening concluded with a powerful message to the people of Israel.
For me, the most important thing for Jews around the world is to go to Israel and share the love.
The United States is in lockstep, and there is a large part of the United States that loves Israel and will be behind them, whatever it is.
ILTV on the hour. We're live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines. I'm Caleb Ben David, and here is your roundup of the latest developments across Israel and the region. Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer has officially stepped down from his role as Prime Minister Netanyahu's top aide, a role he has served for over 3 years. In his resignation letter, personally addressed to the Israeli PM, Dermer said that the current government will be remembered for two things. The first, the October 7th massacre, and the second, the subsequent management of the severed front war, which lasted 2 years. Dermer added, quote, "In our darkest hour, the people of Israel had worthy leaders." Dermer praised Netanyahu's experienced and strong leadership, saying he stood up to pressure at home and abroad, adding, "When the truth comes out and the facts are known, I am confident that appreciation for your leadership will be even greater." The U.S.-born Dermer, who became an Israeli citizen in 1997, served as one of Netanyahu's closest advisors and as the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Upon resigning, Dermer said he had fulfilled his mission to confront Iran's nuclear threat, strengthen Israel's alliances, and help bring the hostages home. While stepping down from government, Dermer will operate as a special envoy for Netanyahu and remain involved on certain issues, such as efforts to expand the Abraham Accords. This according to the Times of Israel. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara says President Trump backs his demand for a full Israeli withdrawal from all of the areas the IDF moved into last year. This before Damascus proceeds with any normalization ties with Jerusalem. Shara made the claim in an interview in the Washington Post today, following his meeting with Trump at the White House on Monday. Shara told the Post that Trump, quote, "supports our perspective as well, and he will push as quickly as possible in order to reach a solution for this." Israeli troops crossed the northern border to secure parts of Syrian territory after the fall of Bashar al-Assad in order to prevent Hezbollah and militant Islamist forces from moving into those areas, and to also deter attacks by them on the resident Jewish population. Al-Shara said the IDF presence is no longer needed with the ejection of Hezbollah troops from Syria. He also rejected an Israeli demand for the border area to be demilitarized, saying Israel is being motivated more by expansionist aims than security concerns. The U.S. State Department is denying reports in Saudi media claiming that President Trump's special envoy and son-in-law Jared Kushner met with one of the leaders of the Palestinian militias in Gaza opposed to Hamas. The report claimed that Kushner met with Yasser Abu Shabab, who leads a local militia in Rafah, at the U.S.-led civilian military command in Kiryat Gat, as part of the effort to create an alternative security force to Hamas in post-war Gaza. Abu Shabab's militias also said being considered as part of a plan that would have 200 Hamas terrorists still hiding out in tunnels beneath Rafah be given safe passage across the border into Sinai and then to a third country. Kushner and Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly agreed to that arrangement in a meeting on Monday, although no nation has yet accepted to take the terrorists in. And congratulations, Israeli actress Gal Gadot has been named as the winner of the 2026 Genesis Prize, the so-called Nobel Prize for the Jewish people that carries with it a grant of $1 million. Gadot was commended for her advocacy and support of Israel and the victims of October 7th. The Wonder Woman actress joins former Genesis Prize winners, including the likes of the Argentinian President Javier Milei, Steven Spielberg, former Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots and a philanthropist, the violinist Itzhak Perlman, former UK Chief Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, and many more in this award. Gadot said she intends to donate the $1 million prize to proceeds to help Israelis help rebuild and recover after October 7th. She received some immense backlash from fans after posting on her social media calls to return the hostages from captivity back in 2023. A Wonder Woman indeed. Congratulations. And that ends our flash for this hour. You could keep watching ILTV or check out our app. You'll see the QR code there on your screen. I'm Caleb Ben David, and thank you for joining us.
Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Ladar Gravelazi, and coming up in today's newscast. The IDF strikes Hezbollah targets in Lebanon and is threatening more action. The United States is reportedly planning a new $500 million base in the Gaza envelope. And after 11 years, Hadar Goldin is finally laid to rest. Tensions are heating up on the northern front as Israel launched strikes against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon overnight. Israel is accusing the Iranian-backed terror proxy of attempting to rehabilitate and rearm in clear violation of the ceasefire agreement and is threatening more action. The IDF struck and eliminated 3 Hezbollah terrorist and multiple terrorist infrastructure sites in Lebanon overnight. The army identified one of the terrorists as Samir Ali Faki, who smuggled weapons for Hezbollah across Lebanon. Among the targets struck included a rocket launching site in southern Lebanon, including weapons that the army says were aimed directly at Israel, as well as several strategic weapons and other terrorist infrastructure. The IDF said that Hezbollah is continuing to attempt to rehabilitate its terror assets across Lebanon in clear violation of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon. Israel is reportedly pressing Lebanon's army to be more aggressive in disarming the Iranian-backed terror proxy by searching private homes in the south for weapons. According to Reuters, this demand has been rejected by Lebanon's military leadership, who fear it would ignite civil strife and derail the army's disarmament strategy. With one Lebanese security official telling the publication the army is confident it can declare Lebanon's south free of Hezbollah arms by the end of 2025. Yet Israel is not convinced as it continues to see Hezbollah attempts at rehabilitation in the south and has threatened that should Lebanon fail to uphold its agreement and fully dismantle Hezbollah, Israel will be forced to intervene to finish the job. And in Gaza, the U.S. and Israel are continuing their coordination on upholding the ceasefire while Hamas is reportedly rearming and gaining more control over its side of the Yellow Line. Meanwhile, a new exclusive report reveals a possible new U.S. base on the Gaza envelope. The details in the following report. The United States is reportedly planning a $500 million base near Israel's Gaza border. This according to an exclusive report by Israeli website Shomrim. According to the report, which cited Israeli officials familiar with the initial plans, the facility would be used by the international forces operating inside Gaza to maintain the ceasefire and disarm Hamas, and would include several thousand troops. The report also stated that potential locations are already being scouted in the Gaza envelope. One senior-level security source cited said that this base represents a major shift in U.S. engagement in Gaza, adding that, quote, Israel has sought to minimize international involvement in the territories. The establishment of an American base on Israeli soil shows just how determined Washington is to be involved in Gaza and the broader Israeli-Palestinian conflict, end quote. To date, only around 200 U.S. soldiers have been deployed to Israel to operate the U.S. Central Military Coordination Center, or CMCC, in Kiryat Gat. The CMCC is already in the process of taking over humanitarian aid distribution in Gaza from Israel's Kogat. Meanwhile, on Monday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with White House advisor Jared Kushner in his office in Jerusalem. Also in attendance at the meeting were Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer and U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff, along with his advisor Arya Lightstone. The meeting reportedly focused on the implementation of the second phase of U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan, including the demilitarization of Gaza and the elimination of Hamas from any future role in the Strip. The meeting also came as the U.S. is reportedly pressuring Israel to release around 200 Hamas terrorists who are currently hiding underground in tunnels in the IDF-controlled side of the Yellow Line, in return for certain concessions, a move Israel opposes. As such, some critics in Israel are questioning who is really calling the shots in Gaza now, as Jerusalem continues to insist that all decisions are being implemented in full collaboration with the United States. And following his meeting Monday at the White House with U.S. President Donald Trump, Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara said overnight that his country will not enter direct negotiations with Israel at this time over joining the Abraham Accords. However, he did not rule out the possibility of such talks later, perhaps with U.S. assistance. ILTV's Deva Klein has more.
Speaking from the Oval Office, U.S. President Donald Trump concluded his meeting with Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara with positive words.
We want to see Syria become a country that's very successful, and I think this leader can do it. I really do. I think this leader can do it. And people said he's had a rough past. We've all had rough pasts. But he has had a rough past, and I think, frankly, if you didn't have a rough past, you wouldn't have a chance.
Trump added that his vision for peace in the Middle East includes the former al-Qaeda member.
I liked him. I get along with him, the president, the new president of Syria. And we'll do everything we can to make Syria successful, because that's part of the Middle East. We have peace now in the Middle East, first time that anyone can remember that ever happening.
During the White House meeting, the two leaders discussed several key issues, including U.S.-mediated security arrangements between Israel and Syria, aimed at regulating the shared border between the countries, as following the fall of the Assad regime, Israeli forces took control of certain areas in the Syrian Golan. But when it comes to relations with Israel and the potential to join the Abraham Accords, al-Shara told President Trump that diplomacy between Israel and Syria will only occur through U.S. mediation. According to Ynet, Shara said, quote, "We are not going to enter into negotiations directly right now. Maybe the United States administration with President Trump will help us reach this kind of negotiation." Al-Shara told Fox News that the meeting lasted nearly 2 hours and described them as, quote, "amazing." He reported that President Trump gave him a MAGA cap and said he intends to take it back to Syria with him.
And joining us now with more on the latest along Israel's northern border is Major Avraham Levine from the Alma Research and Education Center. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So let's start with Lebanon. Israel is intensifying its strikes against Hezbollah as they are in clear violation of the ceasefire agreement. The Lebanese are claiming on their part that they are slowly but surely disarming the terror group. Israel says that's not the case. I mean, what is your assessment of what's happening? And is Israel heading for another war with Hezbollah?
Well, I'd start by saying that I'm not even sure this escalation is that critical. Israel has been attacking in Lebanon for the past year since we signed the ceasefire, once or twice a day. We've counted over 640 attacks since November 27th, a year ago, in Lebanon, in South Lebanon, Beirut area, and in the Bekaa Valley. So not only in South Lebanon. So we see that happening all the time. I don't think anything changed in that sense. I'm waiting for proof. I'd like to see the Lebanese government, Lebanese army that are in charge of disarming Hezbollah. I'd like to see the weapons. Where are they going? Where are the weapons that they found? IDF was very open in showing the whole world hundreds and hundreds of missiles, rockets, anti-tank missiles, drones that we found in only a couple of months, only in South Lebanon. Now the Lebanese army has been working for a year. I'm still waiting for proof that they're finding, that they're taking, that they're destroying Hezbollah arms, Irani arms, Russian missiles in South Lebanon. Right now, we don't see that proof.
We don't see that proof, absolutely. And I do want to move on to Syria as well. You know, U.S. President Trump met yesterday with the Syrian president. Trump had some kind words for al-Shara. I mean, how would you characterize their meeting? And what was the purpose of the meeting?
Well, I'd start by saying we all have a tough history, or a bad past is not necessarily true. Some of the leaders don't. But I'd say I'm happy Syria is in a better place than they used to be. I hope the Syrian people can get something better of life than they had under Assad. On the other hand, I think we should be concerned about his past, Julani's past. Everyone else can call him Ashara, but I still remember his jihadist nickname, El Julani. Maybe that's the reason he doesn't want to move on to the Abraham Accords so fast. But seeing ex Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Jabhat al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, visiting New York and Ground Zero last week, and visiting the White House now, leaves me with concerns about our security. And I think that's where Israel should stand. We do have common interests with Julani. We all want a stable country neighboring our northern border. We all want the weapons coming in from Syria to Hezbollah to stop. Julani's working on that, and IDF is working on that. So in that sense, I think we should negotiate with him about better security understandings, about the border. But I guess I agree with Julani. A peace process is yet to start.
And al-Shara, or Julani, he was constantly saying that he wants peace with Israel. But in his meeting with Trump in recent weeks, he's been a lot more cautious with his rhetoric. I mean, why do you think that is? And do you foresee a future where Syria will join the Abraham Accords?
Well, you have to remember his past and his alliances internally in Syria. And I think when half of your army commanders have jihadist history, I think he's careful to say, I'm going to jump in with Israel immediately, and he's taking it step by step. I think it's extremely smart on his side to not rely only on Erdogan and to look for more partnerships and cooperations with Europe as well as US, representing himself well as a new leader and allowing everyone else to put aside his history. I think that's smart on his side. We have to be careful and remember who he was and be prepared for what happens if he doesn't hold up and is not able to bring together all the different parts of Syria and continue the battle inside. There's a way to go before he has a stable country in his hands.
So still a long ways to go until absolute peace in the Middle East, as Trump likes to say. Major Avram Navin, thank you so much for your insights today.
My pleasure.
Turn up the volume. I am Chaim Biros, Mayor of Modi'in and Chairman of the Federation of Local Authorities in Israel. It's time to join us in Modi'in, City of the Future. We are waiting to welcome you to our young, modern, innovative city with great schools and, of course, all the benefits. Hope you will make Aliyah soon and join our Olim community who are so happy to call Modi'in their home. Now is the time to make Aliyah. See you soon.
Israel is strong and growing. Now more than ever is the time to make Aliyah.
And as Israel continues to mourn the fallen hostages whose bodies have been returning over the past few weeks, one name that has again captured the nation's attention is Hadar Goldin. Goldin, who was an officer in the IDF, was killed and taken into Gaza during the 2014 war. His remains were returned this week, allowing his family and the country to finally lay him to rest. Our correspondent, India Naftali, is live in Hostage Square with more. India, what can you tell us?
Yes, Lidar, I'm here in Hostage Square, where flags and posters are still being hung in honor of the fallen hostages who still have not been returned. One of those fallen hostages who did return this week is, of course, Hadar Goldin, whose funeral happened this morning at the Kfar Saba Military Cemetery. Now, they already had a funeral for him back in 2014 when they had enough proof of death to hold the ceremony, but now that his body's returned, they're giving him a proper burial.
It's a somber morning of closure in the city of Kfar Saba in central Israel. Thousands attended the funeral of IDF soldier Hadar Goldin. 11 years have passed since he fell in battle in southern Gaza during Operation Protective Edge. His place of burial was declared as unknown. The 23-year-old soldier was killed in 2014 when Hamas terrorists ambushed his unit in a tunnel attack. His body was kidnapped and held hostage in the Gaza Strip for more than a decade. Today, his family, friends, and commanders gathered to honor his memory. At the funeral, IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir made a powerful declaration that Operation Protective Edge is finally over.
בהצדעה
ובהרכנת ראש אנחנו מלווים היום את הדר בדרכו האחרונה, שלה היה ראוי מזמן. לוחמי סיירת גבעתי, חברי הצוות של הדר, לחמתם לצידו במבצע צוק איתן. התגייסתם ונלחמתם גם במערכה הנוכחית בגבורה. לכם, כמו לצה"ל כולו ולמדינה, המעגל נסגר. מבצע צוק איתן הסתיים.
Hadar's mother traveled the world advocating for his release, even speaking before the UN. Here's what she shared today about how they persevered for so long.
הדר, חיכינו לך 11 שנים. זה המון זמן. המון. אין לי באמת הסבר איך עשינו את זה, חוץ שבכל רגע ששקענו, היה מישהו במשפחה ואומר, היה קופץ ואומר, אבל מה הדר היה אומר? בדרך כלל זו הייתה הילד. אז אנחנו פה בגלל כל מה שהשארת לנו, כל הוראות ההפעלה שלך, ומי שאתה.
The ceremony reflected Israel's deep-rooted commitment to never leave a soldier behind. It's a national promise that every fallen troop will be brought home, no matter how long it takes. Hadar Golden, who became a symbol of this principle, has finally been laid to rest.
And in other news, Americans for Ben-Gurion University has launched the David Ben-Gurion Speaks, an AI-powered video series that brings Israel's founding prime minister to life. Let's take a look.
I am David Ben-Gurion, and 50 years after my death, my namesake, Ben-Gurion University, has bloomed into an oasis of innovation in the Negev desert. 20,000 students on campuses in Be'er Sheva, Sdei Boker, and Eilat study desert and water resource, sustainable drylands, alternative energy, global health, medical breakthroughs, robotics, and fields unknown in my time: nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. My friends, it is not enough to be up to date. You have to be up to tomorrow. Israel's future was rising from the Negev, just as I had envisioned. And so they came to destroy it.
And Israeli President Isaac Herzog is currently in Zambia on an official visit to the African nation. He received a warm welcome Monday at the presidential palace, where he held diplomatic meetings and bilateral sessions aimed at strengthening relations. Joining us now with more on this visit and on Israel's broader strategy of deepening ties with African countries is Shiri Fein-Grossman, CEO of the Israel-Africa Relations Institute. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So let's start with the president's current visit. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about the significance of his visit to Zambia?
Yes, this is very an important visit. We haven't had an Israeli president visit Zambia in decades, and the DRC as well. Both the Democratic Republic of Congo, or in short DRC, and Zambia, which is planned is part of the plan of the trip, are very important regional countries. Zambia and DRC both enrich in resources. Zambia more on the southern part of the continent, and DRC being in the center of the continent and being the largest country of the continent, and has the most mineral resources in the countries, some in very high percentage of the world, what's the resource of the world. So both are extremely important, and also both are strong allies of the United States these days, with an infrastructure project, a very big one that is called the Lobito Corridor, which is a project to connect from the Lobito port in Angola to Zambia. A railway that never existed between Zambia and the DRC to the Copper Belt area of the DRC. It's part of this big competition between China and the US over resources and minerals. So I view it as Israel aligning U.S. interests, but both Israel's interests, and really strengthening its friendships on the continent. And I have to say, DRC and Zambia are strong supporters of Israel. We've just seen the reopening of an Israeli embassy in Lusaka in Zambia after many years, and we at the Israel-Africa Relations Institute have recommended to do so and to open more embassies throughout Africa. So this is a very exciting and happy day for us as well.
So absolutely, and Africa is an area that, I mean, has largely been neglected by the Israeli government, for example, in the past few decades, but there is a renewed push already from a few years ago to try and improve, to try and deepen relations. I mean, what can you tell us about this and about the importance of Israeli-African relations, especially at a time, you know, when we see some of Israel's relations with other countries that have soured?
Exactly. The time is now. Everybody's competing over Africa's friendship. We talk a lot about the Abraham Accords and its importance. Unfortunately, we talk a lot about a whole lot more, and sometimes I speak about it as well. But actually, the GCC countries are fighting over partnerships in Africa. UAE is currently the greatest, the biggest investor, more than China, in Africa. So everybody's now rushing to be Africa's friends, and Israel should definitely be in the game. Historically, our relationship with Africa started 3,000 years ago with the Queen of Sheba visiting King Solomon, up to Golda Meir and Ben-Gurion's strategy of helping the young countries. Although Israel was only a young country, it really gave its hand to kind of help the new countries in Africa out of colonialism and to help it grow.
So from an historic relationship to a modern day one, Shiri Fine-Grossman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And today we once again have the pleasure of hearing from Yael Eckstein, president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, as she brings us the latest highlights and inspiring updates from the fellowship's ongoing work.
Shalom from here in Israel. I'm Yael Eckstein, and here are 2 fellowship projects that you should know about this week. Number 1, the fellowship learned that in the city of Tiberias, there were many people who were suffering from food insecurity. After 2 years of war, there were people suffering. They couldn't afford food, and they couldn't find basic food items. And so the fellowship opened up a soup kitchen. And so now, in the city of Tiberias, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is distributing over 150 food boxes every single day to people in need. Number 2, I want you to meet Valentina. She's 85 years old, and she's just one of so many people who get helped by the fellowship. She's been living alone for over 2 years since her husband died. She has no one to visit her, no one to help her, and we learned recently she doesn't have enough to buy both her medications, to pay her rent, and to buy food. And every single month, a volunteer delivers to Valentina a food box with everything that she needs. This is saving lives physically and spiritually. Well, there you have it, friends. There are 2 fellowship projects that you now know about. Join me next week, same place, same time, for more updates on what's happening here in the Holy Land at the fellowship. Shalom.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 17 degrees Celsius or 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see cloudy skies alongside steady temperatures with highs of 26 degrees Celsius or 79 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and our new live channel. And you can also catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gavelazi. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.
Welcome to ILTV Security Brief. I'm Caleb Ben David. Each week, we focus on the latest developments in security and defense relating to Israel and the Middle East, impacting on this region and beyond. And we start with our top items of the past week. Hamas hands over the remains of Staff Sergeant Itai Chen, Colonel Asaf Hamami, Captain Omar Nutra, and Staff Sergeant Oz Daniel, all killed in action during the October 7th attack. That leaves the remains of 7 hostages Hamas has failed to return in violation of the Gaza ceasefire agreement. The IDF continues its airstrikes on Hezbollah targets in South Lebanon, eliminating Mohammed Ali Haddad, commander of the Radwan forces in the Nabatea area. At least 5 other Hezbollah operatives are taken out in strikes over the past few days, as Prime Minister Netanyahu warns that Hezbollah is trying to recover and rearm, and says that if the Lebanese government fails to disarm it, according to the ceasefire deal, Israel will act to defend itself. The Trump administration is reportedly pressing Israel to allow some 200 Hamas terrorists still hiding in tunnels under Gaza's Rafah city, an area controlled by the IDF, to move back across the so-called Yellow Line into Hamas-held territory. The Prime Minister's office said the terrorists will not be allowed safe passage under any circumstances. Military Advocate General Major Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi and former IDF Chief Prosecutor Colonel Matan Solomesh were arrested for leaking the video of Israeli guards allegedly abusing Palestinian prisoners at the State Taiman Detention Center and further offenses connected with covering up that act. Defense Minister Israel Katz appoints the ministry's former chief legal advisor Itai Ophir to replace Tomer Yerushalmi. Israel and India signed a memorandum of understanding to enhance defense cooperation that reportedly includes India buying rockets and air defense missiles developed by Israel Aerospace Industries for some $3.75 billion. And now our big story. The post-war planning for the future of Gaza is slowly taking shape, with the U.S. submitting to the UN Security Council members a draft resolution outlining steps for the creation of the new international force drawn from Arab and Muslim countries that is supposed to maintain security, oversee the disarming of Hamas, and demilitarize the Gaza Strip. Also, the training of a new Palestinian police force. Governance of Gaza will be overseen by the creation of the Board of Peace chaired by President Trump. But in the meantime, Hamas continues to violate the ceasefire terms, failing to return all the hostage remains as Palestinian terrorists engage in sporadic clashes with IDF troops. Here's Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking about the planned security arrangements for Gaza.
אנחנו מחליטים ואנחנו פועלים ככל שצריך להסיר סכנה מיידית לכוחותינו. אנחנו מחליטים ואנחנו פועלים. בסופו של יום, החמאס יפורק מנשקו ועזה תפורז. אם כוחות זרים יעשו זאת, מה טוב. ואם הם לא יעשו זאת, אנחנו נעשה זאת.
And joining us now for more is Jonathan Spyer. He's an author, journalist, and director of research at the Middle East Forum. Jonathan, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Caleb.
Now, Jonathan, you recently wrote a piece for The Spectator about the Gaza peace plan as outlined by President Trump or the Trump administration having to coexist uneasily with the emergent reality in Gaza. How do you see the emergent reality taking shape in Gaza and how the peace plan is going to have to maybe adjust itself to that?
Yeah, well, I do think there are a number of really significant question marks remaining about the Trump 20 or 21-point plan. It was clear that both sides had an interest in the implementation of the first part of the plan that has now been implemented. Hamas had an interest because they wanted to avoid an IDF entry into Gaza City. And Israel, of course, had an interest because we wanted to get back the remaining 20 living hostages and eventually also the bodies of the murdered hostages. So that was clear, the common interest. Moving into the second and third phases, however, I think it's a much more complicated question because obviously the plan envisages the disarming of Hamas and it's giving up of its arms and it's giving up of its political role in Gaza. And Hamas has been absolutely clear from the outset that it has no intention of giving up either its weaponry or indeed its kind of de facto leadership role within Gaza. Now, the IDF, of course, has withdrawn from part of the Strip. Hamas now controls only around 47% of it. But inside that area, Hamas, on a daily basis, is reconstituting itself as the ruling authority. So how you get from that point, where we're currently located, to the point at which Hamas has been disarmed and has departed the Strip, I think remains deeply complex.
Well, clearly they're issues that have to be resolved. One of them is, of course, about this ISF, International Stabilization Force. We just saw Prime Minister Netanyahu say that if it fails to act, Israel will act. But is it really so simple? Because once you have foreign forces introduced into the Gaza Strip, that could place some limitations on the IDF's ability to react.
Oh, I have no doubt that if the International Stabilization Force does indeed come into existence and is then deployed, at least in the currently Hamas-controlled part of Gaza, it will certainly have implications for Israel's freedom of action. And it won't just be vis-a-vis Israel's relations with the countries in question, whether it's Azerbaijan or Indonesia or wherever it ends up being. It'll be with regard to Israel's vital relationship with the United States, because, of course, the United States will be signed off on this agreement. So they'll be very much committed to the success of it. So at that point, if Israel feels the need, I don't know, to engage in hot pursuit, into the area supposedly controlled by the International Stabilization Force, but in which the International Stabilization Force is not adequately dealing with the existing and continuing terror threat, then it's easy to imagine all kinds of scenarios. But I would want to add that, we need to think about these scenarios, but we also need, I think, to acknowledge that we really are in kind of terra incognita here. We're in new and undiscovered territory. The notion in the Gaza Strip of having international forces which are operating on the ground is a very, very new situation. We haven't really seen this before. Certainly, in fact, with regard to the Israeli conflict with the Palestinians specifically, this is a very new idea to have international forces actually deployed on the ground rather than engaged in training or advising, as we've seen in the past. So it's a new situation we're entering into.
Right, and we're talking about complications that may arise in a couple of months, but there are some already on the ground.
Yeah.
Jonathan, take, for example, the story of we believe, some 200 Hamas terrorists in territory apparently controlled by the IDF, hiding in tunnels. Latest on that is that Israel security officials are saying they want to see the return of some hostages, remains, including, for example, Hadar Golden, who's been here over a decade. His remains in the Gaza Strip before they allow it. There's pressure on the U.S. Again, these are issues you would imagine that perhaps should have been resolved before the IDF began to pull back from Gaza and have to be navigated and negotiated moving forward.
Well, I would add to that worrying picture the fact that these 200 terrorists still located behind the yellow line, as it's called, within the Israeli-controlled area, are not just sitting on their hands either. There's been, after all, let us remember, 3 IDF soldiers killed in that area in the recent days. So it means that, it's a very, very complex situation indeed. And in a way, it takes us back, I think, to your first question, because it's easier to see how this is already an example, in a way, of lines getting crossed. It's without a doubt that what Israel would like to do is to take very firm and decisive action against those 200 fighters, engage them, kill as many as possible, and the rest should leave the area. That's absolutely, clearly not what the United States wants, because that would lead to very, very great tensions or pressure on the agreement, even as it's just getting started. So absolutely right, this is a deeply complex situation. It's hard to predict exactly how it's going to end up. I would imagine that one way or another, it probably will end with the majority of those fighters departing the area into the Hamas-controlled zone. But it shows us, from the very outset, that there are deep contradictions in this whole process, and specifically the contradictions at the end of the day between the combatant sides themselves before you even get to the agendas of the international actors. Israel and Hamas remain in a state of war because Hamas wishes to continue on its long-term strategic goal leading to the eventual, as it wishes at least, the eventual destruction of the State of Israel. That's the strategic picture. Hamas hasn't abandoned that. The logic of it wishing to keep its arms is entirely in accordance with that ongoing desire, and Israel is entering into a process to try to quieten things down in Gaza. But at the end of the day, the conflict hasn't ended, is nowhere close to ending. There's no basis for it ending between Israel and Hamas. And we shouldn't be surprised, therefore, to see these kind of tactical complications on the ground emerging from that unresolved strategic picture.
And, of course, part of this plan is also, as I said, training new Palestinian police, bringing in Palestinian technocrats. but really, realistically, within Gaza, is there an alternative to be found to Hamas or even to some of the more radical elements in some of the other Palestinian factions?
Well, the point is this. I mean, in the West Bank, of course, there is the Palestinian Authority backed up by Israeli forces, and this does manage to maintain more or less a livable day-to-day status quo.
Sometimes less, John.
Sometimes less, sometimes more. But what we have in Gaza is something entirely different. There is an existing de facto Hamas ruling authority, both political and military. And since the ceasefire, it is on a day-to-day basis getting stronger and reconstituting itself. So I think, to me, the key question of all this is, you really don't get to a board of peace and a new Palestinian police force and international force until somebody has taken that authority out of existence. Because that authority, the Hamas authority, doesn't wish to coexist with any of that stuff. It wishes to continue ruling itself. So the big unanswered question is who is going to take that work on? And if it's not going to be Israel, and apparently the international desire is for it not to be Israel, then who is it going to be? As long as that authority continues in existence, you're not going to get to implementation of the second or third phases of the current plan.
Right, and the Trump administration especially is going to have to find an answer to that question quite soon. Jonathan, stay with us, because I do want to shift focus now from Gaza to the northern fronts that I know you know well, especially over the border in South Lebanon. Now, despite the ceasefire agreement reached last November, Hezbollah is not only also refusing to disarm, but is attempting to rearm and retrench itself in South Lebanon as the IDF carries out continual airstrikes on its operatives there. More on that in this report by our Devo Klein.
Defense Minister Israel Katz issued a statement accusing the president of Lebanon of dragging his feet. Katz said the Iranian-backed terror proxy is playing with fire and called on the Lebanese government to uphold its commitment to disarm Hezbollah and remove it from southern Lebanon. According to the U.S.-brokered ceasefire agreement, Hezbollah must fully disarm and its terror forces pushed back to above the Litani River, both of which have yet to be implemented by the Lebanese government and army. Katz reiterated that Israel will continue its policy of maximum enforcement and said this might even intensify, adding that Israel will not allow any threat to the residents of the north. And speaking this weekend at a conference in Manama, Bahrain, U.S. Special Envoy to Lebanon and Syria, Thomas Barrack, said on Saturday that despite the setbacks, Hezbollah still remains a major threat to the state of Israel. He questioned who really runs Lebanon, Hezbollah or the Lebanese government. This is what he had to say.
So what's the state? The state is Hezbollah. You go south, Hezbollah gives you water, gives you an education, gives you a stipend, has 40,000 soldiers. LAF, Lebanese Armed Forces, has 60,000 soldiers. The only problem is the Hezbollah soldiers make $2,200 a month. The LAF soldiers make $275 a month. The Hezbollah soldiers have 15,000, 20,000 rockets and missiles. The LAF soldiers are driving old Jeeps, some AK-47s. So which army is which? What's happening?
Jonathan, everything we said about Hamas disarming, applying even just as much or more so with Hezbollah. There is supposed to be a body that's supposed to take charge of that, the Lebanese army, but you've even heard the U.S. envoy to Lebanon casting doubt about that. Can the Lebanese army in any way really fulfill its mission of disarming Hezbollah?
Well, I think there are two aspects to this which we need to consider. One is the political aspect, and the other is the aspect which the envoy also referred to of the capacities and capabilities of Lebanese armed forces. With regard to the political aspect, yes, it's correct that since August, the Lebanese government is committed to a policy, formally committed to a policy of the complete disarmament of Hezbollah, not only south of the Litani, but also in Beirut, also in the Bekaa, throughout the country. But the fact is that it's becoming increasingly clear, and in a way should have been obvious from the beginning, the government has no intention of carrying out that policy, and the reason it doesn't is because the government, like all Lebanese elements, I think with the exception of Hezbollah and its supporters, has a deep fear or even horror at the prospect of renewed civil war in Lebanon, of the kind that was seen between 1975 and 1990. So they're just, I think, not going to try and implement their own policy. Hezbollah have made clear, Sheikh Naim Qassem, the Hezbollah leader, has made clear that if they attempt to do so, there will be an armed response. And we know from previous events in 2008 and other times, when Hezbollah makes those kind of threats, it means them. Hezbollah's weakened, but it's still stronger, I think, than any other force within Lebanon that could put against it. The second aspect is the military one. It's very vital to remember the sectarian component of the Lebanese armed forces itself. Some estimates put the number of soldiers who are Shia Lebanese in the LAF as high as 50%. Even if it's lower than that, it means that LAF is simply not really a force you could rely on if you actually wanted to get into a shooting contest with Hezbollah. It would probably split and fall apart, which means the government doesn't have the political will to do so. But even if it did, it probably doesn't actually have an instrument with which it could effectively disarm Hezbollah.
Jonathan, some of the analysts and generals I've had in that spot over the past couple of weeks have said it's almost inevitable that Israel is going to have return to a full-out conflict with Hezbollah at some time in the future. Do you share that view?
Yeah, I think that's where the logic takes us, really. I mean, if we conclude that, nothing inside Lebanon, no government, no Lebanese armed force is going to take Hezbollah down and take away its arms and its capacities, then you're left with kind of two possibilities, really. One is that Israel resigns itself to the continued rearmament and strengthening of Lebanese Hezbollah. And the other, as you said in your question, is that Israel takes action itself to prevent that. My sense is that Israel, in the post-October 7, 2023 period, is not going to be willing. No Israeli government could possibly be willing to allow Hezbollah to simply begin to rearm and rebuild its strength, which means you end up with the second option, Israeli action unilaterally to prevent that. Now, I would remind us all that that's actually been going on in any case ever since the November 2024 so-called ceasefire. Hundreds of Hezbollah men have been killed by Israeli drones and airstrikes. Even just this week in Nabatea, in Ait Tashab, Hezbollah men killed. So Israel is using the advantages it gained in the course of the war in 2024 to continue a very determined policy of preventing Hezbollah from rearming and rebuilding its strength. Having said that, the current level, I would say, of Israeli commitment and deployment will probably not be enough to prevent that rearming. So if Israel is indeed determined to prevent it, some kind of escalation is, I think, more or less built into the logic of the situation.
I want to turn from Lebanon to its neighbor Syria, which I know you have done extensive research, some up right there in Syria. We're talking about war with Lebanon. Is it possible we could be talking about peace with Syria, Israel's historical antagonist there to the north?
Well, we are seeing, as you're aware, talks taking place now for months between the sides, between the Syrian Foreign Minister Shaibani running it on the Syrian side, and we're told Minister Ron Dermer on the Israeli side, and we're told that some progress has been made. My sense is that, however, this is not currently the key priority for either side, not for Israel and not for the new government in Syria. So they're talking, and the talks, we're told, are making progress or are not making progress. But my sense, at least, is that both countries, both governments, have a great deal more on their plate of much greater urgency right now. And for as long as there isn't sort of shooting going on along the border, I think both Israel and Syria, for now at least, can live more or less with the status quo. Israel has, of course, deployed across the border, and it's committed to the protection of the Druze community in Sweden.
Which is one of the complications towards reaching a peace agreement or even a official security arrangement with Syria right now.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think a full peace agreement to me is very hard to imagine, because I think it would be very hard for any Syrian government to formally cede its claimed sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Sure. Of course, that's not going to be ceded anytime soon by anybody in Jerusalem. So hard to imagine a complete peace agreement, sort of Egypt or Jordan style. But some kind of de facto security arrangement of one kind or another, I think is likely probably in the longer term, depending, of course, on the continued stability of the government in Damascus. And this is not something we should necessarily take for granted. Let us remember that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which has now taken power, getting on for a year in Damascus, still does not have control over the entirety of the country. Indeed, one of the reasons why Hezbollah and Iran are still able, as we are learning in recent days, are still able to bring weaponry across from Iraq, across Syria and into Lebanon, is because the government of Syria does not have full sovereignty over the entirety of that country's territory. So I think another kind of big question mark to do with all this, if one looks at Israeli-Syrian relations, is, how stable is the Sharar government? Is it likely to enjoy longevity? Might it not be all that stable? These are also, I think, considerations to add to the mix. After all, nobody should have any interest in making a peace agreement or even any kind of arrangement with a power that doesn't actually rule the entirety of its territory and might not even be around in the longer term.
Well, you mentioned President al-Shara. One of the big question marks is what are his real intentions? I mean, a lot of people in Israel, a lot of security analysts and Syria experts question whether someone really could have moved so quickly from being a jihadist, from being sort of almost al-Qaeda figure, to becoming someone who's going to coexist with Israel in any way. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I tend to also be very skeptical. And I think with all of these, one should be looking at what's happening practically on the ground. We're already a year into Shadra's government, so are there indicators of where he may be headed? And the answer is, if we look at what he's done, there's already been 3 cases now of very grave and large-scale sectarian bloodletting, twice against the Druze, once against the Alawis of the western coastal area, carried out at the hands of forces either directly or tangentially linked to the Damascus government. So Shadra is creating clearly an authoritarian government with himself at the top. It has a Sunni Islamist tinge to it. He is rebadging some of the most, actually, highness, I would say, of Sunni jihadi commanders of the civil war period as division commanders in the new Syrian army. So, yeah, I would not assume by any means that he has peaceful intentions in the longer term. In the shorter term, I think he has no choice but to have not peaceful, but at least stable intentions, because he's got too much on his plate inside of Syria, trying to consolidate himself, to have any thoughts about, aggression outside. But in the longer term, yes, this is a jihadi. This is somebody who just a decade and a half ago was sitting in an American jail in Iraq with his comrades from al-Qaeda. So we should certainly be taking that into account.
All right, Jonathan Spire, thank you for joining us on ILTV Security Brief.
Thanks, Khalif.
And now a final word. Famine, genocide, expulsion. These were words thrown around endlessly during Israel's war against Hamas, at street protests, in academic seminars, in editorial pieces, and in the halls of human rights organizations. But the truth is that while there may have been cases of malnutrition in Gaza, there was no hunger. While civilian casualties regrettably did take place, there was nothing even remotely like genocide. And despite the charges that Israel went to war to resettle Gaza, not one Palestinian was expelled from there. And the war ended, as Israel always said it would, with the return of the hostages. But there is a real genocide underway, real famine and real expulsion taking place now, not in Gaza, but in Sudan's brutal civil war, in the Darfur region, where hundreds of thousands of civilians are being killed by the rebel rapid security forces. The bloody killing fields so vast there that they are visible by satellite. A new report finds close to 500,000 people there are starving in the midst of a combat zone. And over 4 million Sudanese have had to flee the country, with 4 times that figure internally displaced. Numbers that dwarf what took place in Gaza. So where were the rallies in Western cities decrying the situation in Sudan? Where are the humanitarian rescue missions? The cries of celebrity activists? The mobilization of international groups and governments to stop the bloodshed in Sudan and the vast hardships that are being inflicted on its people? Could it be that because the Sudan civil war pits Muslims against Muslims, and Muslims of color at that, that so much of the world chooses to feel comfortable to ignore that conflict while continuing to focus on the supposed crimes of the world's only Jewish state and army? Now, Israel's battle against Hamas was a complicated, messy campaign, as brutal and heartbreaking as all wars must be, even necessary ones. And this country, this democracy, is still grappling with the war's fallout, as indicated by the latest affair around the alleged abuse at State Taymon prison and the scandal involving the IDF prosecutor's office connected with that. But the insightful hyperbole, the outright anti-Semitic invective directed against Israel and the IDF during the Gaza war and now beyond accomplished nothing. Not for the Palestinians of Gaza, not for those protesters and rights groups that screamed famine and genocide, not for those hypocritical governments that condemned Israel for sins far less than their own. The world cried an ocean of tears from Gaza. What a shame, then, that it seems to have run out of them when it comes to the far more immense human tragedy now unfolding in Sudan. Thank you for joining us on ILTV Security Brief.
Israel has received another body of a hostage taken on October 7th, but before that, freed Israeli hostage is speaking publicly for the first time about the sexual abuse and torture he endured in Gaza. 21-year-old Ron Braslavsky was kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad on October 7th, 2023. In an interview with Israel's Channel 13, he described 2 years of horrific abuse in captivity. ILTV's India Naftali is here to share more. India, what are we hearing about Ron Braslavsky's horrendous captivity experience?
Yes, Sivan, we've known all along that there was a lot of sexual assault on October 7th, despite the denial of many. We've known that female hostages were sexually assaulted in captivity, but now we are hearing for the first time one of the hostages coming forward with the story about his sexual assault. It's incredibly brave, but I'd also like to warn that it's very difficult to hear the details. Ron Braslavsky was working as a security guard at the Nova Music Festival when terrorists from the Palestinian Islamic Jihad abducted him on October 7th, 2023. He was held in Gaza for more than 2 years before being released last month under the U.S.-brokered ceasefire that saw all the living hostages released. In a gut-wrenching television interview, Braslavsky recounted being stripped naked, tied up, starved, and sexually assaulted. He said, "They stripped me of all my clothes, underwear, everything. They tied me up while I was completely naked. I was torn apart, dying with no food." He described the abuse as sexual violence designed to humiliate and break him. When asked if it happened more than once, he said yes and continued to say, "It's something even the Nazis didn't do. During Hitler's time, they wouldn't have done things like this." And after his release, he said, "I came back from meeting the devil." Braslavsky's testimony marks the first time a male hostage has spoken publicly about sexual assault in captivity. Former female hostages, including Amit Susana and Ilana Gritsevsky, have previously described similar abuse. In May, 15-year-old Daphna Eliakim, who was abducted alongside her 8-year-old sister, spoke of repeated sexual abuse by a Hamas captor. She said, "One of the terrorists would touch me all the time. He said they would release everyone and I would stay with him so he could marry me." There are numerous unspeakable reports of the rape and grotesque sexual abuse that happened on October 7th and thereafter. These were not spontaneous acts of brutality, Sivan, but were a deliberate part of the operational plan behind the October 7th attack on Israel. Again, I have to say, Ron Braslavsky has been incredibly brave to speak up about the atrocity that happened to him. Back to you.
Horrendous. Thank you, India.
Israel's only English news channel, bringing you the headlines that matter every hour, straight from the center of where it's all unfolding.
Back to ILTV on the hour. We're live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines. I'm Caleb Ben David, and here is your roundup of the latest developments across Israel and the region. Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer has officially stepped down from his role as Prime Minister Netanyahu's top aide, a role he has served for over 3 years. In his resignation letter, personally addressed to the Israeli PM, Dermer said that the current government will be remembered for 2 things. The first, the October 7th massacre, and the second, the subsequent management of the severed front war, which lasted 2 years. Dermer added, quote, "In our darkest hour, the people of Israel had worthy leaders." Dermer praised Netanyahu's experienced and strong leadership, saying he stood up to pressure at home and abroad, adding, "When the truth comes out and the facts are known, I am confident that appreciation for your leadership will be even greater." The U.S.-born Dermer, who became an Israeli citizen in 1997, served as one of Netanyahu's closest advisors and is the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Upon resigning, Dermer said he had fulfilled his mission to confront Iran's nuclear threat, strengthen Israel's alliances, and help bring the hostages home. While stepping down from government, Dermer will operate as a special envoy for Netanyahu and remain involved on certain issues, such as efforts to expand the Abraham Accords. This according to the Times of Israel. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara says President Trump backs his demand for a full Israeli withdrawal from all of the areas the IDF moved into last year. This before Damascus proceeds with any normalization ties with Jerusalem. Shara made the claim in an interview in the Washington Post today, following his meeting with Trump at the White House on Monday. Shara told the Post that Trump, quote, supports our perspective as well, and he will push as quickly as possible in order to reach a solution for this. Israeli troops crossed the northern border to secure parts of Syrian territory after the fall of Bashar al-Assad in order to prevent Hezbollah and militant Islamist forces from moving into those areas, and to also deter attacks by them on the resident Jewish population. Al-Shara said the IDF presence is no longer needed with the ejection of Hezbollah troops from Syria. He also rejected an Israeli demand for the border area to be demilitarized, saying Israel is being motivated more by expansionist aims than security concerns. The U.S. State Department is denying reports in Saudi media claiming that President Trump's special envoy and son-in-law Jared Kushner met with one of the leaders of the Palestinian militias in Gaza opposed to Hamas. The report claimed that Kushner met with Yasser Abu Shabab, who leads a local militia in Rafah, at the U.S.-led civilian military command in Kiryat Gat, as part of the effort to create an alternative security force to Hamas in post-war Gaza. Abu Shabab's militias also said being considered as part of a plan that would have 200 Hamas terrorists still hiding out in tunnels beneath Rafah be given safe passage across the border into Sinai and then to a third country. Kushner and Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly agreed to that arrangement in a meeting on Monday, although no nation has yet accepted to take the terrorists in. And congratulations, Israeli actress Gal Gadot has been named as the winner of the 2026 Genesis Prize, the so-called Nobel Prize for the Jewish people that carries with it a grant of $1 million. Gadot was commended for her advocacy and support of Israel and the victims of October 7th. The Wonder Woman actress joins former Genesis Prize winners, including the likes of the Argentinian President Javier Milei, Steven Spielberg, former Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots and a philanthropist, the violinist Itzhak Perlman, former UK Chief Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, and many more in this award. Gadot said she intends to donate the $1 million prize to proceeds to help Israelis help rebuild and recover after October 7th. She received some immense backlash from fans after posting on her social media calls to return the hostages from captivity back in 2023. A Wonder Woman indeed. Congratulations. And that ends our flash for this hour. You could keep watching ILTV or check out our app. You'll see the QR code there on your screen. I'm Khaled Ben David, and thank you for joining us.
After 11 long years, the body of Lieutenant Hadar Golding has finally come home as chilling new testimony emerges from hostages and horrific sexual abuse. With Hamas refusing to disarm and these revelations shaking the nation to its core, is Israel on the brink of a final decisive confrontation? And in New York, a shocking leaked video reveals who's funding newly elected anti-Israel Mayor Mamdani, God help us. We're unpacking it all right here on The Quad. Welcome back, everybody, to The Quad, and here in our Jerusalem studios with my wonderful co-hosts, Emily Schrader, human rights activist and journalist, Shoshana Keats-Jaskell, founder of Chochmat Nashim, Elevating Orthodox Women's Voices, and a special guest co-host all the way from London, Stephen Phillips. You may know him as Lord Stephen Phillips from X, but he is the executive director of Jewish ERGs, and he's going to explain to us what that is a little later. Welcome back. And we have a show for you. Hadar Golding's remains come back to Israel after 11 years, after an incessant campaign by his family and, of course, Hamas as ever trying to do tricks in the last minute not to return the body. And on top of all of that, we have these harrowing tales of sexual abuse coming from one of the captives who came back. Look at this.
הפשיטו אותי מכל הבגדים, תחתונים, הכל. קשרו אותי אלימות מינית, וזה בעיקר המטרה שלה להשפיל. המטרה שלו הייתה להשפיל אותי, לדרוך לי את הכבוד, וזה בול מה שהוא עשה. כן, וזה קשה, זה הדבר הנוראי. זה משהו שהנאצים לא עשו אותו.
But as Hamas is refusing to disarm, are we looking into another showdown? We're seeing what's going on in Lebanon. They're rearming. They're moving south. Are we going to see a second round of this whole entire war again? Emily, what do you have to say?
Yes.
Again?
Yes.
Oh,
I do think we will see another round. And
of everything?
Well, yeah, because I mean, we already know that from like literally within days of the Iran-Israel conflict ending in June, they were trying to build up a new proxy in Sudan. They have just in the past year, despite all of the sanctions, despite all of the obstacles that the regime is facing in Iran, they've sent over $1 billion worth to Hezbollah to rebuild in Lebanon. So of course it's going to happen.
Meanwhile,
you have Hamas that hasn't been completely obliterated, another proxy of the regime. It's not going to go until the regime goes.
Sending $1 billion with a country which is starving and thirsty. And this is what we have in Iran. Lebanon, the Lebanese army haven't managed to control the Hezbollah forces. They had a golden opportunity. And what's going to happen with Syria, God knows, because Al-Jarrah, or whatever his name is, Jolani, is playing basketball in the White House. Shoshana.
I don't even know what to say. I feel like I don't. Emily usually is very on point with these things, so I'm a little bit sad to hear her say yes, because I'm like, no, like I just got the mamad cleaned out. Like I just got used to not hearing sirens and not worrying about where my kids were and not thinking about all the chayalim. Like it's almost like it's too good to be true that they're all going to come home and bury, and the ones who are still not home. And round two, this is round 67, 30 million. Like, I don't know. How do you get rid of Hezbollah when they don't want to be gotten rid of? How do you get rid of Iran when they don't want to be gotten rid of? I don't have an answer. I don't know.
Well, unless you assist the people in overthrowing the Islamic Republic of Iran, as they have been begging for 47
what does that
years.
look like? Honestly,
Yeah,
what would
it looks like investing in infrastructure that can supply internet to them in the times of protest. It looks like, if possible, arming them. It looks like supporting opposition groups in order to have a united opposition. It looks like full enforcement of sanctions and holding regimes like Russia and China accountable for sanction evasion. I mean, their oil exports are the highest that they've been since 2015 in the last year. How do you explain that? At a time when there's unprecedented sanctions?
Didn't we just, exactly, they just put the sanctions back on them.
So but no one is enforcing those who are helping them evade, like China and like Russia.
And ultimately, they're the head of the snake, and all of the exported terrorism is coming from them. But I think the difference is now, at least with Gaza, that we're on that yellow line, which is 53% of the strip, and we're not moving. And these people are not rearming. And so if it only means that we've enclosed the terrorists a little bit more, and they now have to worry about how they manage their own people, which is going to be a big challenge for them, not us, maybe that's a little bit of a victory. Stephen, welcome.
I think the saddest thing for me, and thank you for having me, what a badass collection of people to be sat next to. The saddest thing for me is to hear me say, yes, because this is my 4th trip to Israel since the war started. I was here on October 7th. There's a whole collection of things that happened. And this is the first time it feels like the cloud has just shuffled and shifted away a little bit. I landed, you haven't got so many faces, it's just a few. And everything feels a little bit more whatever normal is in this country. I'm not sure what normal is here.
Yeah.
But it does feel a bit post. So to hear Emily kind of, yes, is like, Oi, I don't think we can do it as well. How many chocolate bars can we send you? Like, really, it's enough.
I think we're just realistic, and ultimately you're dealing with a mentality that doesn't believe in peace, they just believe in hudna, which is the peace between the wars, which is basically what Israel has gotten used to. Our whole entire modern state existence here, the peace between the wars, and that's how we incredibly thrive as an economy. By the way, people don't talk about this, and they want to be doom and gloom about Israel's economy. The Israeli shekel is the strongest it's been, and a war hasn't knocked it down. Now, why is that? People are asking, why is that? Because very quietly, there's so much investment. There's so many AI data centers being done quietly. NVIDIA has invested so much money here. The concentration of AI talent in the world is here. And so, you can hate us all you want, but ultimately, we hold here a lot of that database intelligence that is going to be running the world. And people don't seem to understand that when you want to boycott us, you're in fact boycotting yourselves, which brings me to Mandani. My God, I was in New York last week. And I started the day I met with some Jewish friends of mine who'd been very involved in the Cuomo campaign. And at the beginning of the day, everybody was a little positive that maybe, like Trump, the polls got it wrong and people didn't want to admit they were voting for Cuomo. And then as the day progressed, it got increasingly...
More than a landslide, but because there was the additional... Because they had SOA, so it was...
Yeah, but even if he had went in there, he would have lost by 32,000 votes.
It still would have lost. I blame the Jews for Mandani, to be honest, but that's a whole other thing. But guess
there aren't that many Jews in New
Cuomo
York.
was not a good candidate.
He was never...
Well, for sure. You could blame the Democrats.
When you have a person who is, an alleged sex predator, that's not exactly a great candidate to run.
He's right.
No.
It's true.
It wasn't...
Two bad choices, no one wins.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, New York definitely lost, and the Social Democrats of America have got their little laundry list of what they want Mandani to do.
They're just going forward with their plan.
But everything, there's not one thing that hasn't got something to do with boycotting Israel.
Yeah.
Not one thing. Not the free buses. I mean, these are the Social Democrats of America. So nothing to do with socialism, only to do with Jew hatred, because that was their agenda all along. And guess who admitted was helping Mandani all along? The very biggest scumbag that we've had many, many times, but we're not going to dedicate too much time to her, Linda Sarsour.
And Care.
And Care.
Right now, I'm a little more quiet because I'm on the quiet side of this race, but I'm going to tell you that once November 4th comes around, I will tell the story. The story is not just, that it's random that Zahran ascended to this place. It is our Muslim American communities. And I'll also say that it's Muslim money. The PACs that have supported Zahran, or a particular PAC that has supported Zahran, is probably over 80% of Muslim American donors in this country. High net donors, grassroots donors. And I want to make the point that the Unity and Justice Fund PAC, which is the CARE Super PAC, was the largest institutional donor to the pro-Zahran PAC in New York.
So basically, Mandani, as I think Bellamy said last week, is the perfect, he's the baby of wokeism and Islamism. They would have had a baby. That's Mandani. And that's what we have. What's going on in London with your mayor?
It's great. We love it. It's really wonderful. I recommend it. It's really funny to me. I've spent a lot of time in New York as well this year. And New York is always crazy, right? But as the election got closer, I was there just before Rosh Hashanah, and it felt crazier than it had ever been. It was like they were preparing for the next round of crazy. But I think they fancy us. They're so obsessed with us. I can't think of any other reason why. They just won't leave us alone. What are they with the Jews? They don't want to be us? What is this? It's crazy.
I really don't.
What's crazy is that's happening on the right and the left right now. Everyone is obsessed with us. Either they love us or they hate us, but there's nothing else in the universe. Apparently, there are no other issues in America other than Israel.
Or Sudan or Nigeria.
It's the only thing going on, and that's really a very scary thing. The other day I went to the cinema. I never go to the cinema anymore. But I went to the cinema to watch a really good film that I recommend that everybody watch called Nuremberg. So it was all about how...
sounds uplifting.
No, but it
was light film.
Very light, rom-com. But it was... it's very relevant to today, because it was basically all about how they got to the idea of trying the Nazis under what jurisdiction, and how this could be an international. Now, in Israel, there's a debate. How do we try the Nukhba terrorists? How do we do it? What is the mechanism that we do? do we actually put them to death, which I think everybody around the table agrees that we should.
All about yeses today.
Is there going to be a war? Yes. Should we try the Nukba terrorists and hang them? Yes. And should Israel be stopping Lebanon or the Hezbollah in Lebanon in its tracks? We've gone back to basically trying to bomb them, to go back to their lines. And of course, the world is accusing us of breaking the ceasefire, even though they broke the ceasefire by rearming. And so where is this all going to end?
Ceasefire, they're breaking international law. They're breaking 2 different UN resolutions.
They're breaking the one of moving?
No, one in 1559.
Oh, I'm surprised.
Which is disarmament. Yeah, shocking.
Yes. And the international troops that were placed there, I mean, they were completely useless, UNIFIL.
Yeah.
They don't have a UNIFIL now. I don't know who's monitoring whatever ceasefire it is, but it's almost like the world wills it to be a ceasefire. We also want a ceasefire, but the reality of the situation is that these jihadists have momentum. And the reason why they have momentum is because of Mandani and the fact that the world is going along with this craziness. Where will it end?
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I don't think we want a ceasefire. We want peace. We happen to accept a ceasefire because it gives us some quiet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the hard truth. They don't want either, really.
They don't want either.
They just want, like you said before, the peace,
Rearm.
the peace between the pieces.
Yes. The peace between the wars.
Yeah.
But
It's really
Lebanon's-
kind of depressing.
Lebanon's government actually, I think, for a long time did not say anything when we were taking out terrorists, because they really do want, I think, they don't want Hezbollah, they want them out, but they really just seem incapable of joining that officially because of all of the pressure around them and all of the...
Well, somebody explained it to me and they said maybe they just don't know how. They've been so many years. They've had this state within a state. They've had Hezbollah literally here, that they don't know how.
I don't know.
And remember, Hezbollah is very integrated in the government itself.
Exactly.
I mean, they've held this entire country hostage. And I want to clarify again for anyone watching that when we say Hezbollah, we mean the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yeah.
That's who's occupying Lebanon.
Yes.
And that's who's behind it. That's who's funding it.
Yes.
And that's been their mission from day one with the establishment of Hezbollah in Lebanon. So it's a disaster for Lebanon.
It's a disaster for Lebanon, and unfortunately, they're on our border, and we have wonderful people in the north of Israel trying to rebuild these communities in a new light, with vision, to try and really resuscitate, but also make the north thrive. We have the same down south. I mean, this can be an opportunity for Israel, but if we still have these people and these threats, what are we going to do?
They've gone home. I've got friends that live on the border. They were away for like a year and a half.
Yes, they were not
living in these crazy conditions with parents and all sorts. All the kids
in hotels.
In hotels. All my friends were in their parents on the kibbutz. It was like 1,000 people in one tiny house.
Yes.
They want to go back, but they can't go back if someone's literally like peeping over the border at them, going to fire at them. It's crazy.
This is the problem. This is my criticism of the Israeli government for many years, of both in Gaza and in Lebanon and elsewhere, that like we're mowing the grass. And it doesn't, it's just over and over and over again, 2008, 2012, 2014, 2021, and also now. Like okay, yeah, you have a few years of calm, you have a few years of peace where these societies can advance, or, these communities can rebuild in some cases, and that's great. It's better than a constant state of war, but at the same time, like, if you're gonna have to fight a war, then just finish the job. Like, why does our government never finish the job?
Well,
and I know now there was political considerations with the relationship with the United States,
Yeah.
but they could have done it before. Why didn't Netanyahu deal with this before any of the other times?
But isn't there a vacuum? Like, let's say, okay, so you get rid of Hamas. Who comes in next?
Don't get rid of Hamas. Get rid of the head of the snake.
Well, I'm with you on Iran, by the way. The sadness for me was that we finished the war with Iran when we did, and we didn't go all the way and kill Khamenei. And the reason we didn't is because the Americans didn't want us to go all the way. And the reason the Americans didn't want us to go all the way is because their own flank of the Republican Party, the isolationist flank, who think somehow they're there to do us a favor rather than the fact that, we're doing them a favor, stopped us. And that's, to me, I was very sad for the Iranian people that we didn't help them. But again, who comes in there? Who comes in place?
Right.
Well, inside of Iran, I mean, I think that you could do a whole episode on only this. There's a lot of different opinions. In terms of a single figure, yeah, he's the most popular. But even that, I don't know that he has a majority of people, or we don't know that he has a majority of people inside of Iran. But there is an entire transition plan that he has put forward, not to rule, but to oversee an interim period in order to have a referendum. So there is a lot of planning that's going into that, and they're trying to work with the U.S. government as well as other European governments, and they've made some progress. But the thing that's standing in the way is the West. That is they don't need them to start a war and overthrow the regime. They need them to stop propping up the Islamic Republic, which they continue to do, whether it's through non-enforcement or other deals that they're making. And we've seen it happen time and time again. And it's going to keep happening. And one more thing I want to mention that's really important to understand is that the Houthis stated yesterday that they would start bombing Israel again if they see that the Gaza ceasefire is not holding. We've kind of like mocked the Houthis and made fun of their, ballistic missiles that are being fired here and there. And of course, they're dancing.
We don't take them seriously.
We need more dancing. I would want dancing.
Yeah.
We really are. I haven't seen a
dancing and not the.
We haven't had a dancing video in a long time. Like, we need another dancing video for our,
Yeah,
sanity.
Sanity.
Yeah.
I love the thought of they sit around the camp. Like, which department do you want to be in? I want to fire missiles. I want to be the dancing troupe.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And they go onto the boats with the Israeli flag. Yeah.
Insane.
Looks like a party. But in any case, we know that Iran is pouring whatever resources they have, or I should say the Islamic regime is pouring whatever resources they have into the Houthis and these proxies, and they're going to build them up. Why? Because even with all of our bombing campaigns and the United States of America bombing Yemen, we didn't do anything effectively. We didn't really do anything in terms of actually knocking out the Houthis, which means that now the Islamic Republic is going to double down on the Houthis, and it's going to be worse because, again, all we did was mow the grass.
But, don't they have their own problems? I heard...
No, nothing matters but us.
That they're starving. They've got no water, and in 2 months, they're going to run out of money and have to move the capital, Tehran.
Yeah.
You're in a situation where you're moving your capital, and you think you won, and you're still exporting terrorism and $1 billion? Isn't this, honestly not sustainable? I don't understand how they're still being...
The whole movement's suicidal. They're not looking for sustainability. They're suicidal. They're suicidal, on the individual level. They're suicidal on the national level. Of course, it makes no sense to us. We're just build, create, fix. And they're just ruin, destroy, kill. But that's what they do. So yes, it's not sustainable, and they will not ever change. And so my question in the end is Emily, I hear you. I agree with you. We have to finish it. We have to get the world to stop propping them up. But
how?
This is like a runaway train that has no brakes. There's no brakes. There's no emergency brake. They're not even on a track anymore. They're just whatever they can destroy, they're going to destroy. So what do you do?
Unlike Afghanistan, unlike Iraq, Iran has a different history, and the people want something different. And this is a huge population that has already shown that they're capable of running a country much more properly than what is happening now. So we need to have a united front against the Islamic Republic. That includes cutting off diplomatic relations. What is Europe doing? Yeah. What are they doing? Why are they still even allowing embassies?
No strategy.
There's no strategy for regime change. Yeah. That's the problem. Yeah. They kind of, like you said, they just want to manage them rather than actually get rid of them, which we should be doing for their own people. Forget us, forget the world. They are the unstable force of the world, but their own people are miserable, starving, and thirsty.
And their own people want a revolution, not reform. After the Green Revolution, I think pretty much everybody ruled that out. And they saw that the Islamic Republic itself, and even if you look at the structure of the regime, everything goes back to the Ayatollah. Everything goes back to the principle of Islamic jurisprudence, it's called in English. Everything is the entire structure is built like this. Yes. There is no reforming that. No. There's no reforming that. The only option is bringing down the regime.
Absolutely. There's no reform. The reformists are fake. Their children are having a whale of a time in Europe and America, but everybody else is miserable in that country. And so here we are, ladies and gentlemen, in the Middle East. We believed that we destroyed the Ring of Fire, which was the architects were Iran. We have enemies of Hamas in the south that now looks like have been seriously weakened. At least we have a buffer zone, but they're not gone. 150 of them are stuck in a tunnel, which, by the way, they wanted to use to negotiate for the body of Hadar Golding until actually even Turkey had to get involved and say, no.
Yes, but now Turkey said they're civilians, that there's 150 to 200 civilians
in the tunnel. Civilians strapped in explosives in the tunnel, yes, they're civilians. At least we know that they've stored away enough food to feed themselves. And I'm very, very pleased that Israel is standing strong with either surrender or die. And really, we cannot let these people go.
Agreed.
And, you know, I keep hearing that the Americans want us to use this as a model for providing immunity so that Hamas can go and leave. And this is going to be like the little pilot project. No. Terrorists who are stuck in a tunnel, who tortured our hostages, who killed our soldiers, are not going to get a free pass to a 5-star hotel in Egypt because you're asking us to. And that is something that, honestly, I would go in the streets to protest against. And I think that there's consensus in this country. And so here it is, another week in wonderful sunny Israel that you chose to fly into. At least the flights are back. The flights are back, ladies and gentlemen. Really?
Yeah, I had 3 seats to myself.
Oh my!
I don't know what El Al are doing, but they had a new 777.
They're being forced to compete.
No, I've been forced to compete again.
Sure, because the others are back.
Well, they put a new flight in, which with the others back, I don't really understand. But had 3 seats to myself. I was in poor person business class. When you stretch out, it costs 3 seats.
Oh.
And that's the only reason really I'm here. It cost me like nothing to come.
Oh, that's good to know.
Why be sad in London when you can be in the
Well, that's exactly. Despite all of that,
that's our
you walk down the majority of the streets in Tel Aviv or the Shuk in Jerusalem, and you're still having a whale of a good time here in Israel. All right, well, now we have so many scumbags to talk about. We go on to our favorite segment, Scumbag of the Week. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Scumbag of the Week. I have to say, I get stopped down the street regularly, Scumbag of the Week. And people come up to me and volunteer scumbags all the time. I enjoy it all. And here we are back with the Scumbag of the Week, Shoshana.
My scumbags of the week, I was actually in Paris 2 weeks ago. When I wasn't here, I was in Paris and then London. And so it was really shocking a little bit, even more so, to see this video. My scumbags of the week are the people who set flares inside the performance of the Israeli Philharmonic in Paris. Watch this. It's terrifying. Like, you don't know what you're looking at, and there's like fire in a there's fire, flames shooting in Paris, and you know, obviously you can be anywhere at any time, but like it was a little bit close that I was, not that close to me, but close to the people who were there. I've loved Paris. I had a great time, even though I was doing some difficult work. And they are my scumbags for being just complete buttholes. Sorry, I can't say it. Scumbags of the week.
That's and you have scumbag.
I know, but I want to think there's so many other words.
Oh, yes.
But the Philharmonic responded by playing Hatikva, which is like so Israeli. And their audience stood up, and it was just like, oh, they did flares in the middle of the performance. Okay, now we're doing Hatikva. I was going to stand up. The Israelis, the Jews were just like, this is just another Tuesday. So you're my scumbags of the week, and that's probably the biggest thing you'll ever do in your lives.
You know, it's amazing how these scumbags are basically ruining every cultural experience everywhere.
Yeah.
And I've got a feeling that people are getting a bit fed up about it. I mean, I hope.
I hope so.
I mean, I'm fed up of watching it already. People are just, regular people.
What's that chant that they do in Britain?
Oh, we're going to talk about that in a second.
How do you say it in French?
Ooh, let me think about that. Okay. Stephen, your first ever, I mean, on the show.
On the show.
Yeah.
I've had many scumbags in my life, so yeah, me. And I know Emily was there, so this is going to be a fun one. But I particularly want my scumbag this week to be Chief Constable Craig Guilford of the West Midlands Police. And the reason for him is I'm a football fan. People don't often think that about me, but I'm a diehard Leyton Orient supporter, which I should have got help for years ago.
Leyton
Orient. Leyton Orient. I know, Judge. No one's heard of them around here, so it's fine.
No.
But Craig Guilford, my dad, generational trauma, Jews, basically. I look after their Jewish supporters club as well, which is a new thing we started because I don't do enough Jewish groups in the day. I do them at night as well.
Enough for the Jewish people.
No, I really am. It's no Jews here. But Chief Constable decided on Wednesday before the match to put a statement out about how it was related to the hooliganism that was the reason that they weren't...
The hooliganism of
the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans was the reason they weren't allowing them there.
Yeah.
Now, I've read the reports from Amsterdam, which is what this was based on, and it wasn't about the Jews. It was about the Jews being beaten up and being in hospital. And then I watched what happened because I was here. I would have been there with the other amazing people that went and counter-protested like Emily, but I was in the sun. It's difficult decisions. And I looked at what happened. There was 10 arrests. One was a firework thrown into the ground. 2 were racially aggravated hate towards the Jews. And one was someone not taking their mask off. Now, I've been with people like Emily protesting, we don't wear masks, so we know what was going on there. And then also outside were people saying things like, we should not have mercy on the Maccabi fans who are IDF killers. So really, Mr. Chief Inspector, who's also currently being investigated for allegations of discrimination.
Ah, there you go. For who? Discriminating on who?
Racism and homophobia.
Oh, okay.
So, really, was it the Jews? I don't think so. So you, sir, are my scumbag this week.
Absolutely. The minute I saw that video, I thought, what BS? This guy's now justifying retroactively a decision about hooliganism that never happened.
It got overturned. Maccabi Tel Aviv were offered tickets and said, actually,
no, we don't want, because you can't protect us.
Right.
And they were right.
Wow.
Emily, that brings us to your scumbags.
Yes, so my scumbags were the protesters at the Aston Villa Maccabi Tel Aviv game. Now, just so everyone understands the context, who maybe doesn't follow all of English football.
First of all, I'm very impressed you said football and not soccer.
Correct.
So well done, Emily.
I always say that. It's a habit, I guess, now. But yeah, so they actually banned all fans of Maccabi Tel Aviv under the false premise that, you know, there was too much hooliganism, which is highly ironic when you look at some of the racist and sexist and homophobic and pro-violence chants that we hear from pretty much every football club in the UK, and not just in the UK, in the whole world. Like, if you look at what they're actually chanting in, like, South America, as I'm sure you know, it's craziness.
The whole thing's
craziness.
crazy.
I mean, Israel's got nothing on some of the stuff that's going on, so it's ridiculous.
We invented it. And we invented the things that come.
You're the OGs.
Really,
yeah.
Yes.
So I did end up getting tickets to this game as an Aston Villa fan, not for Maccabi Tel Aviv. That section was completely empty in the stadium.
They closed the entire section?
Yeah, it was empty.
That's ridiculous.
The pictures are crazy.
Yep.
Like half the ground is just nothing.
Yep.
So you had to get a ticket as an Aston Villa fan?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
And I cheered for Aston Villa, and I will tell you why. Because the club was against this ban.
Yeah.
Their fans were against this ban. And the fans who were actually in the stadium were extremely supportive. They were even supportive of Maccabi Tel Aviv. Of course, they weren't cheering for them, but they were respectful. You know, overall, it was a very good environment, which is not, you know, necessarily obvious at a football game. And so I really appreciate how the fans spoke out against it from the very beginning. And the reason that the protesters who are outside are my scumbags are because they're not even fans of Aston Villa.
No.
They held this big protest with thousands of anti-Israel protesters chanting about Palestine, waving flags of the Islamic Republic. Almost all of them at some point or another had their faces covered, which of course is against the law in the UK. Police, in the majority of cases that I saw, did absolutely nothing. When there was a counter-protest of pro-Israel voices who were marched through with police escorts on every corner to protect them from these Islamist mobs, they brought them into the basketball court, which was fully caged, yes, caged in, which is why there were people talking about how it was a Jew cage. It was a really, really disgusting thing to see just visually outside of the stadium. However, I myself wasn't involved in that protest because I was going actually to the game. Inside the game is where I, at one point, was actually pulled out of my seat along with the other 3 people that were with me because I had the audacity to wear a shirt that said Zioness on it. And despite the fact that I was wearing a sweater the entire game because it was cold, I took a picture with that shirt during halftime, which prompted someone, I wonder what leanings ideologically they have, reported to the stadium that there was a Maccabi Tel Aviv fan. There was a Maccabi Tel Aviv fan. Accused me of wearing a football shirt of Maccabi Tel Aviv, which of course I wasn't. It wasn't even the same colors. Mentioned nothing about that. It was blue and white, not even Maccabi blue, saying Zioness. Yes. So they pulled me out in the presence of dozens, literally dozens of police and stewards from the stadium to interrogate me about what my shirt was and, you know, if it was indeed a Israeli football club, which of course would be the end of the world. It wasn't, and once it was determined what Zioness means, they permitted me to go back to my seats. Now, to their credit, they were very polite. But the fact that you would interrogate someone this way over such a ridiculous complaint is absurd and indicates what the problem is overall in the first place. And this is the reason that Maccabi Tel Aviv said, we don't want the tickets. We don't want our fans to go there because you can't protect us. And one more thing about Birmingham, which is the crazy Islamist hellhole, is that before the game, The Islamist protesters, again not Aston Villa fans, had put up signs all over the city saying genocidal baby killers, Maccabi Tel Aviv players, that they've been in Gaza murdering children, which of course there's no evidence of this. And I remind you that Maccabi Tel Aviv is comprised of Israeli Arabs and Jews, both.
Absolutely.
And beyond that, they also had signs that said, if you identify as Zionist, call this hotline. So of course I took a photo with this.
They found you.
They found me. But it was just a really ugly, sad scene. I know a lot of the anti-Israel groups were also conversing during the actual game, saying that they were trying to identify which hotels the players are in,
they didn't
which hotels that fans are in, to try to identify them. So pretty much when the game was over, we got out of Dodge and didn't want to hang out in Birmingham too long. But I think it was important that there were some voices who were pushing back against that, both the counter-protesters and also myself and the others who came with me to attend this game. And it's also important that Aston Villa fans spoke out the way that they did. So I applaud them for that. But my scumbags are these hideous protesters. And I will double down on your scumbag with the police, because the fact that they knew this was going to happen for weeks, and they allowed that protest to take place. And you would have thought that Palestine was playing in a football match. But nope.
The schools
They're politicizing everything about sport. It's outrageous.
They shut some of the schools early.
To come out to protest.
Just because there were things going on in Birmingham.
Oh my God.
Yep.
They're so screwed. No, it's really
beautiful.
It's really bad, and really, it's an omen, or it's like a window into more things to come. I think, unless there's a drastic change. But well done to you, Emily, for going there,
my life.
for risking your life. You are a true Zioness. And,
so calm.
and honestly, it's just, I mean, if you're arresting Emily and her friend for wearing a T-shirt, then where have you gotten to? It's really ridiculous.
Yes, we're violent hooligans.
Violent hooligans, yes. At least you're glamorous violent hooligans. All right, well, I'm sticking with the UK. And my scumbags this week, and we've had them on before, but this is very specific, are the BBC, but especially the two people who resigned yesterday. Tim Davie, who is the head of the BBC, and Deborah Turness, who is the head of news for the BBC. And I always love a scumbag with a happy ending, but let's just go. Let's just go through why the BBCs are such scumbags, and why this guy and this woman, the buck stops with them for having 5 years of terribly biased news coverage, especially, of course, the last 2 years during the Gaza war. They essentially became the spokespeople for Hamas, yes, a terrorist organization. First of all, they refused to call them terrorists. They were calling them armed whatever. Let's just go through some of the examples. They got the whole Al-Ai hospital wrong. They claimed that we had bombed and killed hundreds of people. It turned out to be a rocket from Hamas or Islamic Jihad, and only a few people were dead when it was their rocket, of course. Then they told, a BBC presenter said, that Israeli forces were targeting people and medical teams, when in fact the quote was translated wrong. Surprise, surprise. And they said, yes, sorry, we had to retract. There were some medical teams amongst the people, but it wasn't a target. Then they went on to say that we committed, we were doing a forced starvation, famine. They took pictures of kids that was staged and said this is famine. They took pictures of, like the New York Times, of course, of kids who had congenital illnesses and said we were starving them. And of course, they did that very famous BBC documentary where they took a little boy and his terrible life in Gaza, except that he was a son of a Hamas minister, and they didn't bother to check. And even when they found out, they didn't care much. But none of this would have moved this Tim Davie and Deborah Turness to leave. But what had to happen for them to actually admit that they are the heads of a rotten Islamist news outlet, when they took a tape of Donald Trump and they sliced and diced it to make it sound like he was calling on people to storm the Capitol? Look at this.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. and we fight. We fight like hell.
Then it turned out that they took a sentence from here and a sentence from there and a sentence from there, and they very dishonestly put it all together.
We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. One of our great achievements will be election security, because nobody until I came along had any idea how corrupt our elections were. I said, something's wrong here, something's really wrong, can't have happened, and we fight. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
And so none of the anti-Jewish hatred or anti-Israel bias, that couldn't move them, because that was really their raison d'etre. What did move them was when the White House said, what is this? And that was real manipulation. But we know that that manipulation that they did with Trump was only the cherry on the cake of the manipulation that they've been doing against Israel and against Jews for the last few years, especially during the war. So like I said at the beginning, I love a scumbag with a happy ending. And the happy ending here is that Tim Davie and Deborah Turner, you're out. And let's hope that the BBC can be redeemed by bringing some serious, unbiased journalists to essentially what is the government's broadcast service, which is paid for by the British taxpayer. And if they don't, I would suggest that the British taxpayer stop paying their license fees, because this is a joke. You're being paid to be indoctrinated by a bunch of haters. So that's my scumbags of the week.
You know, it really just shows you that when they get away with doing this to Jews,
yeah, eventually,
when they get away with doing it, and nobody catches them out, and nobody protests it, and they don't get in trouble with their jobs for faulty misinformation journalism, it's like, oh, well, maybe we can keep going. Maybe we can keep. No, you're a liar from the beginning to the end, but you were only caught when you did it with Trump. And I say to everyone at home, like, if you see someone who's being dishonest and manipulative when it comes to Jews, just be aware, pull your lens back a second, because there's a reason they're doing that, and it's not for your benefit.
Well, I think the part that's even more shocking about it is that the part of the reason this all came out now is because there's evidence, like there are internal memos about them knowing that stories they were reporting are false.
And they still ran the story. It fits their narrative. Yeah. So it wasn't about you telling the news, it was about you fitting the story that you concocted.
I haven't watched the news at home since I got back from Israel after October 7th.
Wow.
Because I turned it on.
GB News are okay.
GB News is about the only one.
Yeah.
It kills me because it looks like it's filmed on a potato and it needs to deal with that. But I came home from Israel where I was watching the news, which was, I could barely understand. It's not good quality.
No,
I could barely understand it, but I could see visually what was going on.
Yeah.
And I came back from man on a kibbutz with a camera, bad things, list of names, and I got back home to 4 people in the studio like this saying, well, you know, what we think they're saying may have happened, possibly is, and going on down this rabbit hole of like, sorry, I'm in the mamad dealing with the rockets coming, and we're not talking about that. So I decided, like, no news for me. Like, GB News or I-24 is all I happen to occasionally watch, because it's not worth it. And Janice, obviously.
Of course. No, but really, it's what we've been saying for a long time, that they're not telling the news. They're just not telling the news. They've got a story, they've got an agenda, and everything is just, it's like Al Jazeera. And let's not even talk about BBC Arabia. I mean, they basically take, their commentators are Hamas members. Yeah. Their journalists are card-carrying Hamas members, and they never disclose the affiliation of their so-called journalists when they're interviewing them. And so this comes out as supposedly decent reporting. It's really... It's just like you say, Jews are always a canary in the mine. When you turn against the Jews, eventually it's coming for you, like that famous poem that we won't go back to. But we need our sanity, and that's why we always find heroes of the week. So, Shoshana, who's your hero this week?
Oh my gosh, I have watched this video so many times.
Yes.
Like, just take it out the trash. Yes. Jonathan Carton, you are my hero. Thank you for that visual. And I'm sorry that you had to go through what you went through. He was he is an IDF reservist who was speaking in Toronto. I believe his uncle was unfortunately murdered by a terrorist, and the terrorist was let out in this most recent deal to free the hostages. So he's speaking in Toronto, and what did you call them? Run-of-the-mill pro-Palestinian scumbags came to protest him and were actually increasingly violent, broke through a glass door into, like, really breaking through to the people who were, the Jews who were behind the door. And he was just like, forget this, takes himself out, and one by one takes him out. You've got to watch this video.
Touch them! You're not allowed to touch them! I'm cold!
You're moving.
You're not allowed!
Everyone's moving.
Don't touch me! This is a sign! Don't push it! No!
And I just feel like every time that happens, like, I know, like, I'm not into football / soccer, I'm American, like, whatever. Football. But this is the kind of thing I get behind me. I will watch this over and over again and cheer for my team, because this is the kind of stuff that makes me so happy to see, like, good people, or at least people who stand for their convictions. And they're just standing there like, don't stop, oh no. Like, what? Who are you? You've no backbone. You have no nothing. You just stand there with your mask and you come and you scream, and then someone actually takes himself seriously and says, I'm not going to stand up, I'm not going to stand for this. I'm going to take you out. And you just get trashed out there, my friends, trashed out. And if you guys at home are like cheering for that guy, for those guys who like just stand there with their phones and their keffiyehs wrapped around them, you're on the wrong team.
Absolutely. But also, don't they sound like screaming zombies?
Oh, they're not.
Every single protest I see, it's like they're like hysterical. Zombies. That's what it seems to me. All
Can't talk to them. Even if you wanted to.
They're not brave. They're vapid. They don't.
It's crazy.
I mean, Jonathan is a friend of mine, and I loved the way he just like, boom.
Love that video. You know, it's like bookmarked.
I texted him, and he's like, they just didn't know.
But he was hurt. Like, you know, we're laughing, but he had lacerations.
Of course, we had lacerations. Yeah.
It needs to be in a gift, so we can just send it around.
Yeah. Oh, please don't be that. Instead, I do.
Kol hakavod, Jonathan. That's a great hero. Emily, who's your hero?
So my hero this week is Noga Erez, the Israeli artist, who has been targeted a lot over the past 2 years. She's spoken about how a lot of her gigs were canceled. We have a clip of her speaking.
Today, I got a call from my management saying that many of the festivals and media appearances that booked me have canceled my participation. Because I'm an Israeli. I really wish it was just one case, but the list kind of keeps growing. It's not for anything that I said. It's simply because I was born where I was born. I believe that boycotting artists will not bring any solution. I believe that banning songs and movies and plays and books, etc., is not gonna fix the world's problems. The world is full of so much suffering. The amount of pain happening right now is devastating. I've seen some of it with my own eyes. Maybe right now would be the best time for us to try and find common ground and not add to how shitty it already is.
So as you can see, unfortunately, one of the byproducts of this conflict and the politicization of everything arts and culture is that a lot of Israeli artists and athletes have been targeted in different circumstances. And despite the fact that they have nothing to do with the politics and in fact often are very critical of the Israeli government, it's never enough for the Jew haters. Now, Noga is very successful internationally. She has had a sold-out tour all over the world despite the war situation. But her closing show in Mexico City, she received dozens of death threats, of violence. They tried to get her to cancel the show. They warned her that she would be assaulted along with her team and the fans if she went forward with the show. She went forward with the show anyway, as she should, so kol hakavod to her for that. And they did try to, there was a lot of security, they did try to attack some of the fans and the team, and I think this is disgusting. But I have to say to her, in response to all of this hatred, I'm just kol hakavod. I mean, standing up to that is not, it's not obvious, it's not an easy thing, and you shouldn't have to do it. You shouldn't have to do it. And the fact that you are just because of where you were born and your nationality is ridiculous. And I just want to play one more clip of Noga responding to the BDS haters and some of the comments. Take a look. So Noga Erez, you're my hero of the week.
Nice. Exactly. These artists don't want to be dealing with this. They just want to sing.
Yeah.
They just want to be who they are. Absolutely. Yeah. All these artists who've shown such mettle in the last few years. Good for them. Stephen.
Wow, so many options for heroes as much as there are options for scumbags,
Yes.
which is really, really cool.
Yes.
So I'm going a very different direction, but the work that I've been doing recently is supporting Jews in their workplace Jewish groups. So a lot of the big companies I started the one at Amazon. It was a nightmare.
Explain to us what this is.
So it's kind of like a JSOC or a Hillel, but at work.
At work.
So there's a lot of like these diversity, equity, inclusion groups where we have the Black Employee Network, the Asian Employee Network, whoever. And my thing at Amazon was I did a long training, didn't see any mention of Jews. I said, where are the Jews? And someone said to me, start a group.
Right.
It was an endless paperwork and nightmares, and you're just a religion. We don't do religions. And we could do a whole 3-hour episode on the things that I see. But as much as it's tough work, it's really important work, and it's really kind of changing the space a little bit for Jews in the workplace, especially since the war, who came back to work on October the 9th, the people writing Free Palestine on their workplace Slack channel. Like many companies saw that sort of thing, and Al Jazeera being shared on the company resources. And then you see Microsoft a few weeks ago, who had encampments on their actual campus. They broke into the president's office and they're demanding all these things. So it's a little bit crazy, but also people just want to be in their little Jewish community at work because they don't know how to talk about what's going on. It doesn't have to be physical. They just want a little channel. So my heroes are all of these people that are doing their full-time job and then deciding to, on the side, be the Jewish leader in that space. It's really tough. They're countering anti-Semitism, hate, and doing positive things. There's like 100 Hanukkah parties about to go on in big companies that you'd never think would do a Hanukkah party or do a Purim party or throw out apple and honey at Rosh Hashanah and honey cake. It was a honey cake tasting competition where people, so amazing, amazing things. So my heroes are all of those people that decided to stand up and lead. They've had their Hineni moment. They've said, here I am, I'm going to lead.
Very nice. Oh, well done. And well done to you for leading the charge and starting the whole thing.
It's that I have to do it. I feel like there's no organization doing it. So my thing is I quit my job in tech. I had an amazing job in tech and I turned my back on it because it's really important that we support each other as Jews. So hopefully we're going to start moving. We're a non-profit now. We're doing all the fun things. The fundraising begins, which is just the best.
Oh, yes. Best part of it. Well done. It's really important work. I know what you've done. And it's taking off. And I think that's what people don't realize about anti-Semitism. The more you hate us, the more we're like, okay, we're going to be a little bit more Jewish now. The Jewier we get. Okay, my hero this week is Ben Shapiro, because in a viper's den that has become the woke right in the Republican Party, in the MAGA movement, whatever you want to see it, with scumbags that we've had in before, like Tucker Carlson, who is really determined to bring back old school medieval Christian anti-Semitism, and platforms, famous haters like Nick Fuentes, who is a racist, a homophobe, a misogynist, says women want to get raped. This is the guy saying black people should have, basically chanting for apartheid, the real one, not the one they invent, that doesn't exist over here. The scum of the earth, and the Tucker Carlson platforms this guy. People are beginning to normalize this guy and his terrible, terrible bigoted beliefs. And nobody's saying anything. And the head of the Heritage Foundation, which is one of the most important, if not the most important, right-wing conservative think tank in America, is saying, oh, why are you picking on Tucker? We don't believe in cancel culture. No, you had a responsibility. Your own people are doing a mutiny against you. But I'm not here to talk about scumbags. I'm here to talk about the one hero that has actually come out in the only, what's that expression in Hebrew that ends done? Where is the, where is the tzaddik? Exactly. So that's Ben Shapiro, who is unapologetically, even if he's lost followers, he doesn't care and he's not losing any sleep. But he went on the Megyn Kelly live shows that she did. He went on his own channel and basically took all of the most hideous opinions of Nick Fuentes and put them out on display for people to see who this little worm is and how the platforming is basically normalizing not just hatred towards the Jews, hatred towards everyone, and how everybody seems to be going along. Even the New York Times did an almost flattering piece on Nick Fuentes where they actually put, look at this, a picture where the little worm looks semi-attractive, which he isn't. That's the New York Times. Platforming racist. As long as they hate Jews, that's okay by them.
Not deserve.
Nazi, a Hitler fan, a Stalin fan. And Ben Shapiro did this extremely viral clip. I think it's gone more viral than the Nick Fuentes interview with Tucker Carlson, saying this is who this is, and anybody who's normalizing him or whitewashing him or softballing questions to him is complicit to this hatred. And it's, again, like you said, Shoshana, it's not just about the Jews. It only starts with the Jews. These people are bad news. And the fact that Ben Shapiro has to be the only guy who calls it out, I think is shameful that he's the only guy, but I want to give him the zchut and the credit for being the hero who's calling it out, because every generation needs one. And Ben Shapiro, that's you right now. So Ben Shapiro is my hero of the week.
So I actually have taken issue with Ben on various things, whether it's abortion, whether it's whatever.
On everything.
So, but what I want to say is this: as you're speaking, I'm thinking like, what if Ben wasn't in that position? Like, what if Ben had not been who he is with the positions and opinions that he has, and what if he had not gotten himself that type of platform and he wasn't there to do that work of saying, you're cheering a Nazi?
Yeah.
Because if someone from the Democratic Party or someone who was left-leaning or whatever, even centrist, who were to do that, they wouldn't go viral like that. And so I feel like, they talk about Queen Esther, like who knows if this is the reason you got to the throne, you became the queen. And I do wonder if this is maybe Ben Shapiro's Queen Esther moment. Like maybe this, to fight this insanity in his own party, is why he built the platform that he has built over the years and gotten the respect that he's gotten and built up the following that he has. And I do wonder, this is what Jews believe in, right? Like, this is my job. Like you said, I had a great job in tech, but my people need me. And so.
But Ben Shapiro, it's not just that he's an Orthodox Jew, he's a big American patriot.
Absolutely.
So when he does this because he knows this is bad for America.
For sure.
And I really admire him. Again, like you, I don't agree with everything he says.
Yeah.
But he's the only guy coming out and talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few others. I know Dinesh D'Souza.
Yeah, Dinesh, and also the Officer Tatum has come out.
Yeah.
There are the conservative, but in terms of like going all out there to dissect who this worm is, Nick Fuentes?
Because Ben he's intellectually, he has intellectual integrity, which is something that we're seeing be compromised, of course, on the left in the past few years.
Oh,
with
they're gone.
Democratic Socialists of America and how they've sort of subverted that movement, and now they're doing it on the right, and a lot of it is Qatar. And other nefarious actors within the right. But instead of actually sticking to their own conservative principles, they are excusing people because they're friends with them. And by the way, also Megyn Kelly, wow, the way that Ben destroyed her in that interview, unbelievable. And he's ripping her arguments apart, and she's saying, "Oh, well, I didn't watch." Really? But your job is literally to have an opinion. You're a pundit. You should have an opinion. What is this? Oh, well, I'm not going to have opinions about people who say things on the right.
I know, and she's not my friend. But when he talks about Candace Owens, when she interviewed Tucker Carlson, and she was asking him only a few difficult questions, he was so rude to her.
Yeah, he was.
He was so rude. He's actually, as we say in Spanish, an antipático. Antipati, you know what I mean? It's like, he's just not nice.
Yeah.
The turning point had him to doing one of these events, and somebody asked him a question, and he was still not nice to them. He doesn't have the charm and the kindness of Charlie Kirk. Like, why? I hope that his star is going to start to fall, because it has to.
Yeah.
I mean, and however much Qatar
No,
props
it's being
him up,
propped up. Yeah.
for sure he's been propped up by Qatar. And really, that's another. We talked about Iran a lot, but Qatar is also the one to
100%.
try and bring down.
Yep.
So with that happy note, and with our heroes, we brace ourselves for what the next week will bring. Hopefully good news, and hopefully the rest of our fallen heroes coming home for a dignified burial. And with that, we also pray for peace and quiet. Thank you for watching.
Welcome back to ILTV On the Hour. We're live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines. I'm Caleb Ben David. Here is your roundup of the latest developments across Israel and the region. U.S. President Donald Trump has formally requested that Israeli President Isaac Herzog grant Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a full pardon for the offenses he's currently accused of in his corruption trial. Trump first made this suggestion informally in a remark directed to Herzog during his speech at the Knesset on October 13th. Now he has made that request in a letter addressed to Herzog, saying it is time to let Bibi unite Israel by pardoning him and ending the lawfare once and for all. Prime Minister Netanyahu has stood tall for Israel in the face of strong adversaries and long arms, and his attention cannot be unnecessarily diverted. While I absolutely respect the independence of the Israeli justice system and its requirements, I believe that this case against Bibi, who has fought alongside me for a long time, including against the very tough adversary of Israel, Iran, is a politically unjustified prosecution. President Herzog's office has responded, saying that while, quote, the president of Israel holds President Trump in high regard, President Herzog has repeatedly clarified that anyone seeking a pardon must submit a formal request in accordance with established procedures. Prime Minister Netanyahu has himself not officially requested a pardon from Herzog. Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer has officially stepped down from his role as Prime Minister Netanyahu's top aide, a role he served in for over 3 years. In his resignation letter, personally addressed to the Israeli PM, Dermer said the current government will be remembered for two things. The first, the October 7th massacre, and the second, the subsequent management of the Seven Front War, which lasted 2 years. Dermer added, quote, in our darkest hour, the people of Israel had worthy leaders. Dermer praised Netanyahu's experienced and strong leadership, saying he stood up to pressure at home and abroad, adding, when the truth comes out and the facts are known, I am confident that appreciation for your leadership will be even greater. The U.S.-born Dermer, who became an Israeli citizen in 1997, served as one of Netanyahu's closest advisors and is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Upon his resignation, Dermer said he had fulfilled his mission to confront Iran's nuclear threat, strengthen Israel's alliance, and help bring the hostages home. While stepping down from the government, Dermer will operate as a special envoy for Netanyahu and remain involved on certain issues, such as efforts to expand the Abraham Accords, this according to the Times of Israel. The U.S. State Department is denying reports in Saudi media claiming that President Trump's special envoy and son-in-law Jared Kushner met with one of the leaders of the Palestinian militias in Gaza opposed to Hamas. The report claimed that Kushner met with Yasser Abu Shabab, who leads a local militia in Rafah, at the U.S. Civilian Military Command Center in Kiryat Gat as part of the effort to create an alternative security force to Hamas in post-war Gaza. Abu Shabab's militia is also said being considered as part of a plan that would have 200 Hamas terrorists still hiding out in tunnels beneath Rafah be given safe passage across the border into Sinai and then onto a third country. Kushner and Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly agreed to that arrangement in a meeting Monday, although no nation has yet accepted to take the terrorists in. And in some good news, Israeli actress Gal Gadot has been named as the winner of the 2026 Genesis Prize, the so-called Nobel Prize for the Jewish people that carries with it a grant of $1 million. Gadot was commended for her advocacy and support of Israel and the victims of October 7th. The actress joins former Genocide Prize winners, including the likes of Argentinian President Javier Milei, Steven Spielberg, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Robert Kraft, Itzhak Perlman, and the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, the former chief rabbi of the UK. Gadot said she intends to donate the $1 million prize to proceeds to help Israelis heal, rebuild, and recover after October 7th. That ends our broadcast for now. Of course, you can follow us on ILTV or our app. There's the QR code right there on your screen. I'm Kalev Ben David. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome back to Axis of Truth on JNS. I'm Emily Schrader, and today we're breaking an explosive investigation into how the Islamic Republic of Iran's networks in the United Kingdom have been involved in the Gaza flotilla operation through regime-affiliated supporters working alongside known Hamas operatives on British soil. Plus, we'll be speaking with researcher Orel Tobelem, who brought forward some evidence behind this shocking story. We'll also look at how Israel's tech sector is responding to post-war challenges and the ongoing threat of radicalization in the West. Let's dig in. This week, I want to talk about infiltration and what it looks like when a terror regime builds its front lines inside your own country. Now, for years, the United Kingdom has been a soft target for the Islamic Republic of Iran's influence operations, masquerading as religious charities, cultural missions, and even human rights organizations. But as the documents that we're revealing for the first time today show, the network isn't just about words, it's about infrastructure, cyber, media, money, and yes, propaganda. At the center of this controversy is Shabir Ramtullah Hassan Ali, a British-Iranian engineer trained in comm and a longtime figure of the regime's Press TV and Tasnim News. Also, the point of contact from a regime-affiliated charity in the UK, which explicitly has supported terrorism and which all evidence seems to suggest is a front for the regime itself. For more than a decade, he's been a central node in the Islamic Republic's soft power apparatus in Britain, repackaging Khomeinist ideology for Western audiences under the guise often of social justice. Now, in the recent police report filed to the Metropolitan Police Counterterrorism Unit, Hassan Ali is identified as maintaining direct contact with Zahir Birwawi, a Hamas operative based in London and a key organizer of the most recent Gaza flotillas. Now, the report documents emails in which Hassan Ali requests payment for hosting the Global March to Jerusalem website, the flotilla network's main platform, and claims that he, quote, knocked out 2 Israeli ISPs in Haifa and Tel Aviv, end quote. Documents obtained by JNS, also led by the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission, a registered charity, the Telegraph reported runs summer camps that, in their words, risk radicalizing children through Khomeinist doctrine. The Times has previously exposed him as an Islamic regime propagandist closely linked to Press TV, and now, according to Ozent analysis, Hassan Ali has regularly traveled to Tehran for conferences in support of the Palestinian Intifada, attended by officials from Hamas and Hezbollah, along with the regime. Now, the concern here is that this is no longer diplomatic subversion. It's operational collaboration between the IRGC's information warfare units and Hamas's media arm, run from the UK under charity status, in broad daylight. Now, of course, we knew that this is happening with the Islamic Center in England, funded by the regime, and even attempts to assassinate or kidnap Iranian dissidents on UK soil. But now there's actual documentation indicating that the Islamic regime was involved with the Gaza flotillas as well. Now, sadly, the truth is that the UK is not just a safe haven for dissidents anymore. It's become a safe haven for the Islamic Republic's enablers. If the UK government continues to look away, it won't just be hosting a regime's propaganda efforts. It will actually be aiding a lot of their activities. And continuing on that theme, clearly our big story of the week, which we can now reveal, is the evidence linking the Islamic Republic's #1 fan in the UK to the Hamas-run Gaza flotilla operations. Now, emails that we obtained between Shabir Hassan Ali, a British Iranian IT engineer and, of course, regime propagandist, and Hamas's Zahir Birwawi, a London-based Hamas operative, show years of collaboration in running the website for the Global March to Jerusalem, the Flotilla Network's main propaganda arm. Now, Hassan Ali even wrote in these documents that his system knocked out 2 Israeli ISPs in Haifa and Tel Aviv, which is actually a possible breach of UK cyber laws. He later referred to the project as a serious thorn in the side of the Zionist cult. He also negotiated payment to the tune of thousands of British pounds, on UK soil no less, in exchange for his assistance and services to Hamas operatives, even boasting about how much he helped and what a large role he had in the operation. Now, a separate report filed to the Met Police Counterterrorism Unit detailed how Hassan Ali's work placed him within a network connecting IRGC-linked media operatives and Hamas on UK territory. He was even invited to Tehran for an official Iranian conference in support of that Palestinian Intifada, attended by Khamenei himself, as well as representatives from Hamas, Hezbollah, and other proxy terror organizations, I should say, of the Islamic Republic. Now, this new evidence, or newly revealed evidence, suggests a formal convergence between the IRGC's influence network and the Muslim Brotherhood's Hamas wing operating from the UK. It's not really just infiltration, it's also collaboration. Now, in other news, an Iran-Israel cyber battle is going on behind the scenes. According to a recent report from CTEC, Iranian state-linked hackers have launched a wave of attacks on Israeli critical infrastructure in the past week, and supply chain companies, more than 10 different firms providing IT and digital services to Israeli businesses, were targeted in what investigators describe as a supply chain breaches intended to infiltrate wider networks. Now, one of the highest profile incidents involved the Shamir Medical Center, where Iranian actors breached systems, stole data, and crossed the red line of attacking a hospital, though the disruption was contained fairly early in terms of cyber attacks. Now, the Israeli National Cyber Directorate, working with the Shin Bet and other agencies, credited rapid information sharing for avoiding a much larger digital catastrophe. But make no mistake, it isn't a quiet incident. It's part of a broader Iranian strategy to expand these cyber war capabilities against Israel and its allies as well. By targeting the supply chain providers, the Islamic Republic seeks to gain entry points into Israel's economy, healthcare, and of course, government infrastructure. For Israel, this means 2 things at once. First, the tech sector has to respond with even greater speed and innovation. Startups and defense firms have to develop cyber defense, AI intelligence threat detection, and resilient systems that at hyper speed. 2, the war is not just in Gaza or Lebanon, it's also digital, global, and invisible. When Iran can attack from Tehran or London or anywhere in between, Israel's tech innovators really become the front line. As one Israeli cyber startup CEO put it, our response to Hamas and Tehran is in code. In a region where aggression comes in missiles and cyber packets, Israel responds by building unbreakable networks, or at least they're working on it. Now, joining us today to break down some of this amazing story about Hassan Ali is Orel Tobelem, a research director at the Forum for Foreign Relations. Orel, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. There's a lot to break down on this topic, a lot of documents that we've obtained. To start, can you walk us through some of this newly revealed evidence, specifically the documents linking Shabir Hassan Ali to Zahir Birwawi and the Flotilla Network?
Of course. Thank you, Emily, for having me on. Well, as you've said, newly uncovered evidence shows that between August 2016 and January 2017, Mr. Shabir Rahmatullah Hassan Ali, yes, that's right, I know his middle name, UK-based software engineer and Islamic scholar at the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission in the UK, exchanged various emails with Mr. Zahir Birwawi, who is a notorious Hamas operative and coordinator for the Freedom Flotilla movement. Now, the correspondence itself pertained to Hassan Ali's services as a server administrator for the Global March to Jerusalem website. It was a highly problematic anti-Israel protest movement that was launched in 2011, and it featured contributions from multiple Islamist terror groups. Now, Birwawi has for years been recognized by Israel as a Hamas official living in the UK. and he has risen to prominence in recent months due to his involvement in this year's flotilla frenzy, which saw controversial figures such as climate charlatan Greta Thunberg and pro-Hamas French deputy Rima Hassan set sail for Israel and Gaza in total breach of maritime sovereignty of multiple nations. And Birawi has previously been photographed himself alongside senior figures from Hamas, including Ismail Haniyeh, the Politburo leader who was assassinated in Iran last year. Now, in 2012, Jonathan Schanzer from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies identified the numerous associations of the Global March to Jerusalem Movement Central Committee with Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Islamic regime in Iran. It was actually reported at the time that the project's board secretary was the late Hossein Sheikh al-Islam, who was a Khomeinist politician. Some might remember him as one of the militants who took part in the hostage-taking of 66 American citizens at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in November 1979. Now, as to the emails that I've recovered, these unmistakably show financial negotiations between Shabir Hassan Ali and Zahir Birawi for maintaining Hamas-linked online infrastructure. Now, in this correspondence, Hassan Ali boasted of cyber operations such as downing Israeli internet service providers, implying offensive cyber activity on UK soil. Now, this may actually amount to a significant breach of the Computer Misuse Act 1990, which is a piece of legislation in the UK that is meant to prevent individuals from engaging in nefarious acts involving a computer. Hassan Ali's admission seems to amount more to a violation of Section 3ZA, but again, that's up to any authorities to decide. But it is very clear that he did attempt to damage human welfare or national security of any country, and that includes the State of Israel. Now, funnily enough, it seems from the actual correspondence that Hassan Ali and Birawi had a falling out during this period, and that Hassan Ali's demands for compensation to the tune of £4,435.72 from Hamas were never actually met. So the server itself was decommissioned shortly after the end of this email chain, and it remains unclear whether Hassan Ali actively took money from Hamas during the time that he was running the server. However, what is clear is that he was operating on their behalf at the request of the Islamic regime in Iran. So these exchanges are significant because they demonstrate cross-sectarian collaboration, a Shia IRGC affiliate working directly with a Sunni Muslim Brotherhood-aligned Hamas representative inside Britain. Right, this forms part of the same network that was actually recently identified in an Adkan investigation this year that exposed Hamas links to European flotilla movements led by Birawi, actually through the Palestinian Conference for Palestinians Abroad and also the Europal Forum. So that's in sum quite a lot of stuff to get into, but some really, really impressive findings.
Now, you've described this as a bridge operation, or a bridge between IRGC influence operations in the UK and Hamas propaganda. Why is that connection so significant, and what does it mean for the UK's national security?
Of course. So this correspondence itself is very significant because it confirms an operational convergence dating back more than a decade between the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, and Hamas propaganda arms operating under charitable or activist cover in the UK. Now, this is not unknown to British authorities. Actually, in July 2025, there was a report by the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament on Iran that identified the regime's use of proxy networks, cyber assets, and ideological organizations to conduct deniable attacks and influence operations on UK soil. 300 pages on these operations, and curiously, no mention of Hassan Ali, despite the fact that he actually had received significant coverage in the Times in 2020. So I'm a bit concerned that that was an oversight. The email exchange itself illustrates exactly this kind of mechanism. There's IRGC cyber operatives who are cooperating with Hamas propagandists to influence Western audiences. There's a clear and deeply embedded IRGC Muslim Brotherhood nexus in the United Kingdom, operating at subaltern cultural and government levels, and I'll elaborate a bit on this later. Now, the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, or FIRS, which came into force in July of 2025, effectively created a two-tier registration scheme for arrangements with individuals or entities to carry out political activities on the behalf of a foreign power in the UK. The enhanced tier list currently includes Iran and Russia. FRS was actually the product of the National Security Act of 2023, and it introduced more stringent countermeasures around potential espionage or sabotage operations occurring on UK soil. This particular case highlights many security blind spots in FRS and charity regulation, as these actors often operate under benign labels, but they do so openly.
Now, Orel, we know that the Islamic Republic is the sponsor, the funder of Hamas, despite the fact, of course, that Hamas is a Muslim Brotherhood Sunni group and the regime is Shia. What brings these groups together in this context, and how deep is that connection, at least on the propaganda front specifically? I mean, this flotilla operation, which, as we saw, had very little actual humanitarian aid on it in the first place, was branded as nonviolent activists. So why was Hamas involved at all? And what are they doing on a Hamas/IRGC backed flotilla into a war zone?
Yeah, of course. Well, to answer the first part of your question, that has already received in-depth coverage from Reichman University's International Institute for Counterterrorism. Actually, in a July 2020 report led by Dr. Eitan Azani, who I'm very fortunate to know personally, he talked about the Iranian threat network and the export of the Islamic Revolution through the co-opting of Islamic practices such as da'wah, which is missionary activity. Now, the Iranian threat network itself, or ITN, thrives on pragmatic alliances across sectarian lines when anti-Western or anti-Israeli goals converge. Now, ideologically, both the Muslim Brotherhood and the IRGC share a commitment to the axis of resistance narrative. It's one which totally delegitimizes Israel. It opposes Western hegemony and promotes armed resistance framed as liberation. We know this all too well from all of the protest movements that have been going on across the world, especially for the past 2 years. These groups also share a vociferous desire to intimidate and ultimately exterminate the Jews. Just last week, actually, the Mossad publicly identified a senior IRGC commander, Sardar Amar, as the man responsible for a string of foiled terror plots against Jewish and Israeli targets in Greece, Germany, and Australia in the past 2 years alone. These plans strongly align with the objectives of the Muslim Brotherhood, as once articulated amazingly by their spiritual leader, the late Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who once said in a 2009 interview with the Al Jazeera media network that it was a moral imperative for Muslims to reenact the work of Adolf Hitler. Now, as for these flotilla goers, the flotilla propaganda branded non-violent activism was in reality a Hamas IRGC influence operation, as has clearly been shown by numerous investigations. And these were designed to delegitimize Israel and launder terror branding into humanitarian imagery. Now, in other words, the IRGC and Muslim Brotherhood nexus recruits political ambulance chasers to their cause. Professional opportunists, always on the lookout for another way to proclaim their moral self-righteousness. So, for example, Hamas is actually not the only IRGC proxy with which Sweden's top sailor, Greta Thunberg, has colluded. In early January, she traveled to Algeria to meet with representatives of the Polisario Front. It's a separatist militia operating in the Moroccan Sahara that is armed by Iran and maintains strong links with Hezbollah cells globally. That the Polisario Front has a track record of recruiting child soldiers and torturing residents of humanitarian camps does not seem to bother people like Ms. Thunberg in the slightest, and why would it? She is a massive hypocrite. Hassan Ali's own emails demonstrate the farcical equivocation of these pro-axis of resistance or even pro-Palestinian activism with pro-peace positions. He refers in these emails to his support for the Global March to Jerusalem project as a thorn in the side of the Zionist cult, while boasting about cyber retaliation and the sabotage of Israeli communication systems. So, after all, what truly unites the extreme left and the Islamist camps is their shared love of unfathomable narcissism.
Now, the emails that we have date back to as late as 2016, 2017. And what really surprised me about reading through these documents is that it was like he was bragging about his involvement, clearly showing in writing how the Islamic Republic was behind this, or at least partially so. Why do you think that nothing has been done by British authorities until now on this issue?
So, Emily, you ask actually a very good question. In 2017, Hassan Ali was invited to attend the 6th International Conference on Palestinian Intifada in Tehran. I've actually obtained a copy of the invitation. This was signed by the General Secretariat of the conference, Hossein Amir Abdullahian, who was one of the individuals who was then killed in May 2024 during the helicopter crash that also claimed the life of then Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi. The conference itself featured numerous senior officials from Hamas, Hezbollah, PIJ, chief among them Naim Assam, who currently leads the Hezbollah militia in Lebanon. Photographic evidence shows that Hassan Ali did in fact attend this conference, placing him in circles which included sanctioned actors and terrorist leaders. Now, at the time, in 2016-17, the prevent and counterterrorism frameworks were focused more on the domestic threat posed by Daesh, also known as ISIS, not Iranian hybrid operations. Now, to its credit, the conservative government at the time stood at the forefront of the global coalition against Daesh, committing hundreds of millions of pounds to the training of Iraqi forces, monitoring British nationals seeking to enlist in jihadist operations abroad, and disrupting the group's financial networks. Additionally, there was institutional hesitation to treat Shia networks as a security concern, compounded by charitable registration protections and fears of attracting claims of Islamophobia. Now, the parliamentary report I mentioned earlier actually does admit that the threat posed to the UK by the Islamic Republic was under-resourced, poorly prioritized, and reactive rather than strategic, with agencies treating it as below Russia and China in importance. Individuals like Hassan Ali, whose televised appearances amounted really to incoherent tirades depicting the United States and Israel as satanic, were considered lower priorities, understandably, than, for instance, the Russian operatives using Novichok on UK soil, or China's APT-10 cyber campaign targeting IT suppliers to steal trade secrets from major British firms. Now, this allowed IRGC proxies and Muslim Brotherhood actors to operate under humanitarian or religious pretexts, largely unchecked. It's likely that Hassan Ali, who appears to be of South Asian origin and was born in January 1971 in Uganda, has exploited his British citizenship to engage in activities that would have drawn far greater scrutiny from the UK immigration or counterterrorism authorities had he not held that status. Still, this remains a serious oversight, especially that a 2012 report from Reichmann's ICT identified Sheikh Shabir Hassan Ali as the main figure of the British Ahlul Bayt Islamic mission, describing him as a supporter of Iran's Islamic Revolution ideology and harboring intense hatred of Israel and the West. This should have encouraged British authorities to look more closely at his activities. For example, his travels to Iran in order to attend Intifada conferences. However, I have hope. Given that his passport is due to expire within a few years, it may be in the best interest of His Majesty's Home Office to decline its renewal.
Now, we know that Hassan Ali heads a charity accused of radicalizing children by the UK government. How are groups like the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission, how are they still allowed to operate under charitable status in the UK? Has any progress at all been made to hold the Islamic Republic accountable? I mean, this isn't the first time that charities that were created and funded by the regime itself were used as fronts.
So this is actually a loophole that the IRGC have found. The Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission, whilst it states in many instances on its website that it operates with charitable activities, it's actually not a registered charity in the UK. There are multiple reports of it promoting Khomeiniist ideology and radicalizing British youth, and it still has not been forced to register its activities with the Charity Commission. A July 2025 investigation by The Telegraph actually found that the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission's youth summer camp, Camp Wilaya, funnily enough, had exposed children to pro-Iran and pro-Hamas propaganda, including symbolic glorification of the October 7th attacks. And it had also obligated girls as young as 8 years old to wear the hijab and required segregation of the sexes, all of which was, as they claimed, intended to foster a deeper connection to the Islamic faith. Now, there are ostensibly some charities that are registered, but I'll get on this a bit later. The Times in 2020 revealed that Hassan Ali had developed software for regime-backed organizations, including Press TV and Al-Alam, Iranian state propaganda channels that are currently banned in the UK, yet, as you have pointed out via Twitter, continue to operate seemingly undeterred. We saw this play out just last week during the hateful and violent protest campaign against Professor Michael Ben-Gad at City St. George's University, when masked demonstrators disrupted one of his lectures, and the footage was swiftly supplied to Press TV for maximum online amplification. Nor is this phenomenon actually strictly confined to the Islamic Republic. In late February, an Israeli-Iranian dialogue event at King's College London, featuring my colleague and friend Faiz Alavi, who you know very well, was violently shut down by pro-Palestinian activists, one who was later identified as an open supporter of Muslim Brotherhood militias in Gaza and Sudan. The footage soon appeared on Al Jazeera Egypt, falsely portraying Faiza as a genocide supporter. One of the protesters, an Egyptian national by the name of Osama Ghanem, who is now indefinitely suspended from the university and is facing deportation, given the revocation of his visa sponsorship, has previously worked for Egyptian companies linked to the Al Jazeera media network. It doesn't take a genius to connect the dots. That's not the end of it. In January last year, the BBC released footage from 2020 to 21 showing participants at the Qanun Tawheed Islamic Youth Center in London chanting death to Israel during a memorial for Qasem Soleimani, the famous IRGC Quds Force commander who helped Bashar al-Assad massacre 500,000 civilians during the Syrian civil war. The clips also included online lectures from Iranian generals denying the Holocaust, calling universities battle fronts for Islamic resistance, and urging British students, I mean, stay with me on this, to end the lives of Jews and Zionists. Now, these events appear to have been co-sponsored by the Islamic Students Association of Britain, whose then secretary, British national Mohammed Hussein Atai Abadi, has been photographed alongside Ali Khamenei in Tehran. The Al Tawheed Charitable Trust, which operates the center, has not been shut down by the charity commissioner, and to the best of my knowledge, nothing has been done to even attempt to punish those involved or indeed to de-radicalize their victims. The persistence of this kind of activity reflects charity commission and Ofcom loopholes, insufficient enforcement of terror financing laws, and an absolute failure to link ideological radicalization in our universities and cultural centers to issues of wider national security.
Now, I want to ask you, Aurel, based on your research, how does this case fit into a broader pattern of Islamic Republic operations on Western soil, from foiling terror plots to disinformation networks to infiltration at universities that we've seen? How does it fit into the whole equation?
Well, look, this exemplifies Iran's hybrid warfare model. It uses ideological, cyber, and charitable fronts as part of its global threat network that is focused on the exporting of the Islamic Revolution elsewhere. Now, there have been, for example, at least 15 assassination or kidnap plots by Iran or its proxies on the UK soil since 2022. Iran's proxies, for example, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, they act as force multipliers. They spread influence and destabilization without direct Iranian fingerprints. Hassan Ali's activity falls within the cognitive warfare and interference category. He weaponizes propaganda, cyber activism, and youth outreach to undermine British cohesion and amplify anti-Israel hostility. It's also worth noting that there's no real record of how this guy gets paid. I haven't found any trace of consistent employment anywhere, and so that may be worth looking into. Further, the Iranian regime has increasingly relied on criminal networks to conduct covert operations under the guise of plausible deniability. So it's plotted attacks against US, Israeli, and Jewish targets across Europe and used criminal syndicates to assassinate dissidents. Tehran's trusted enforcer, Naji Sharifi Zindashti, operates networks spanning Iran, Turkey, the UK, and Canada. So he employed figures such as the Canadian Hells Angels to target Iranian exiles and dissidents. Turkish authorities link him to the 2020 abduction of a Swedish-Iranian activist who was later executed in Iran. Now, in January 2024, Sweden's Foxtrot network, led by Rawa Majid, carried out an attack on the Israeli embassy in Stockholm on behalf of Iran. Majid has cooperated directly with Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security, MOIS. Dutch intelligence similarly reports Iran's use of Moroccan criminal clangs in the Mokho Mafia to eliminate exiled opponents, with Tehran protecting their leadership in return and killing any key witnesses. There was a very notable case in 2020, I believe, that featured this kind of cooperation. Now, Iranian influence has also seeped into Europe's digital sphere. During the 2024 Amsterdam riots, which were premeditated and intended to create serious damage and possibly kill Jews and Israelis, social media accounts linked to Tehran circulated videos of assaults on Israeli football fans. One particular Snapchat account, labeled as a government organization under the name Mr. Haq, was actually a reference to the Zaydi Shia Islamist party in Yemen, Hizb al-Haq, long associated with the Houthis, and this was among the most active. Now, in May 2025, in the UK, 3 Iranian nationals were charged under the National Security Act for aiding a foreign intelligence service and targeting journalists from Iran International in London. All of them had entered the UK claiming asylum between 2016 and 2022. It has since emerged that the Iranian embassy in London facilitates illegal travel for such refugees, issuing forms that allow secret returns to Iran in exchange for their recruitment as informants. Consider this. A hostile state is weaponizing Britain's asylum system to plant operatives on UK soil, and yet the government has done virtually nothing to stop it.
Now, finally, I want to ask you what needs to happen next? I mean, should the UK pursue designation of these groups as terror groups, or do they need stronger enforcement under the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme?
You know, Emily, the past 2 years especially have shown me one thing, is that Islamist groups interpret half measures as proof of weakness. Incremental responses only encourage deeper infiltration and adaptation. This kind of penetration is now too advanced for gradualism. You know, this kind of carrot-stick approach that British politicians love to do. Decisive, comprehensive action right now is required. The UK has to prescribe the IRGC under the Terrorism Act, ending the legal ambiguity around its operations. Mandatory registration under the FRS scheme for organizations and individuals linked to foreign regimes must happen. This includes the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Mission. It also includes the Islamic Center of England, which daily broadcasts messages from Ali Khamenei in Tehran, and is also curiously located about 100 meters away from a Jewish primary school in Maida Vale. If this kind of problem persists, the government should move to close any Islamic centers that are found to be supporting IRGC activity for reasons of public safety.